Good afternoon, Access members. Welcome to our CPC session on sales for the staffing services industry. I want to welcome you again here today. Some of the same people as yesterday's, some newcomers. Just want to check to make sure that we're all good. Again, I'm flying alone today, so trying to monitor people coming into the room and enter them into the room while I'm going to proceed with our session today. So if just to make sure you guys can hear me, can somebody just unmute their microphone and verify for me that we're audio good?
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
Awesome, fantastic. Okay, so there's going to be a couple, three more people in the waiting room. Hang on a second, we'll let them in. I was going to say there's going to be a few more latecomers because the number of people registered for today is greater than the number of people in the room right now. So I'll be monitoring that, and I apologize if I have to stop every once in a while to figure out how to push the right buttons. But before we get started officially, let's just kind of run through some of the normal housekeeping matters before we get started. One is that I think you came into the room automatically with the mute microphone on, and I'm going to ask you to keep that on throughout the presentation so that in the event that your phone rings or people come in and out of your office and ask you questions, that we don't have a bunch of background noise. But because I am running this today with a fair number of people and monitoring chats and so on and letting people into the room, then let's try to not use the chat box that much. Just simply unmute your microphone, jump into the conversation and say, hey, Steve, it's me. Can I ask a quick question? And ask the question, make the comment. I'm sure it'll be a good one. Sometimes over the course of 3 hours, I can say things that I think I'm saying correctly, and I'm not. And it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And it's really nice to have people say, hey, Steve, that didn't make any sense. Can you fix that up for us? Or say it again, say it correctly. And sometimes things are just a little bit confusing. But today's session is not that confusing. It's not all about legislative issues and regulations and really exciting things like the law. It's about sales. It's about the cornerstone of everything that we do. And, I think probably in about 1983, I said to my business partner, hey, nothing happens without a sale. So let's change our focus, because we were really, quite frankly, in the beginning, when I started in this industry, we were so focused on, it was important, professional business process. And that was important. I call that obligatory. It's necessary to have your professional business process in place. You can't survive unless you do it well. But you don't get the opportunity to do it well unless you can make some sales and get some customers in the door. So they go hand in hand. And so for today, I'm just going to review a couple little quick things. Let's make sure that we're working properly. In order to attain your CPC, your Certified Personnel Consultant designation, you need to take 5 modules through ACSESS and only offered through ACSESS. And the 5 original modules were business practices and ethics, which we had yesterday, legal aspects for staffing and legal aspects for recruiting, health and safety, and as of last year in October, professional sales. By the way, I want to point out that you probably got sent a copy of the presentation that it's not matching up with this. In the spring, we had a conference in Montreal, and we took this 3-hour presentation and we took it down to about an hour and a half, and it was modified and broken into some sessions, and I'm pretty sure I probably sent that one because it had the most recent date on it over to Jennifer, and she sent it out to you. Don't worry, it's pretty darn close to what we're going to go through today. And at the end of the session, we'll take this presentation that I have up on my screen, which is going to be the same but more screens than the one you have. And we'll put it into a PDF and fire it off to your email so that you have it in your inbox. And you can, so if you happen to see screens on the screen and you're trying to follow along with the paper or something in front of you, you're going to find that my screen has got more slides than yours does. Just write the notes and we'll get you the full presentation in a PDF format with 3 slides per page after the presentation so that it exactly matches what we're doing today. The CPC is only offered through the association, through ACSESS. There are other, human resources like organizations around that obviously offer some kind, and there's sales organizations that offer sales courses, but this is the only one that is specifically designed for staffing and recruitment, and the only one that we're aware of, and obviously the only one that goes towards your CPC qualifying you for your exam. Now you have to have 5 of the modules before you can write the exam. It's optional whether you take the professional sales or recruitment. Quite frankly, I think I've said this to you before, if you've been on a session with me, that I don't know of anybody that hasn't done all 6 because they're all great. And really, when it comes to the practical stuff, the day-to-day operational stuff, the professional sales and recruitment are the 2 most operational. And so those are the ones people really, really want to take. So as we kind of move into our presentation on industry sales, we think about the fact that there are so many roles in a staffing company, whether it's professional search, recruitment, temporary help, contract, doesn't really matter. We all have different titles that we use in order to describe our salespeople. And very often they're blended roles. So we have things like an account manager, which is really probably the same person who went and opened up the door for that account, sold to it, then they remain on to manage the account, or possibly somebody else sold the account, or they're a corporate account, or they came through some other means, a tender, RFP, something. And the account manager's job is to upsell or sell or maximize the sales that take place in there through a combination of customer service, operational service, and through internal selling. So we've got business development reps. Those are usually people that are responsible for new business development, not necessarily upselling or more selling to our current customer base. We have in the search side, we have search consultants, and we have 2 sides of the desk. You got the recruitment side and the sales side, and you know this if you're in placement, that very often there's splits on deals where the person who sold the account or sold the order and brought it in the door gets some percentage of the deal, and the person who did the recruitment side and the matching side gets another percentage of the deal. So we've got search consultants. The executive recruiter is very often a 360 desk person doing everything for that customer, including the sales to that customer. We've got titles like staffing consultant, sales representative, sales associate, recruitment coordinators. Recruitment coordinators, you think are totally responsible for recruitment, but at the end of the day, we got to put that candidate in the customer's office, and there's a part of the process that is the matching presentation and the closure of that candidate. So the recruitment coordinator is very often involved in a significant and most important part of the closing part of the sales. And we've got talent acquisition specialists. I mean, you name it. Staffing companies are pretty creative in terms of the titles. And as a matter of fact, not to get into too much detail, but I'm working with a company in the US that is involved in a lawsuit over some issues around their business. And I'm working as a consultant, providing some expert advice in terms of how the industry works. And this whole lawsuit is hinging around the fact that the staffing company used titles that were not exactly representative of what the person did, and it was misleading in terms of what the person's role was. And so we know that in the staffing services industry, whether it's executive search, placement, recruitment, temporary help, contract sales, payrolling services, no matter what sort of niche you're in, temporary staffing companies, pretty much every role has some degree of sales. And of course, we've got this 360 desk sort of notion that happens. And I think there's not too many industries that have a 360 desk type of approach. I think that sometimes things like the financial services industry, people selling mutual funds, stocks and bonds, financial products. Sometimes they have a 360 desk approach. They've got to service the customer and evaluate their needs and make a sales call and bring in new clients and take care of their servicing their day-to-day requirements. And so there's some industries, but man, there's no industry like the staffing services industry where our people can sit on a desk and they can be involved in lead generation and marketing activities and new client development and order generation and recruitment and matching and all the things that go behind recruitment and matching, like reference checks and credit checks and background checks and validations of people's skills and experience and interviewing, and then the send outs and the closing, the negotiating of the offers, and then maintaining the client relationship. I mean, the 360 desk in the recruitment industry and the staffing services industry means everything, even to the point of pretty much approving timesheets and invoices very often. So the 360 desk is real, and you're probably living it day after day, day in and day out. The sales performers, there's this discussion that takes place, whether it's in the Harvard Business Review or just in companies or on the subway. Are salespeople born? Are you a born salesperson, or are they made? So we've got these, there's this question of nurture versus nature. When kids are growing up and they start to develop these personality traits, and you've heard the stories. I think there's even movies about the twins separated at birth and brought up by two different families, and how they end up speaking the same and walking the same and talking the same and having very similar personality traits about their competitiveness or their athleticism or their bashfulness or something. So we see that there's clearly some degree of nature, and yet industry has spent bajillions of dollars in developing sales training courses to help nurture people into understanding how to become and get training to become better salespeople. So are they born? Are they made? We even have expressions. Are they born? Oh, natural born salesperson could sell ice cubes to Eskimos. I don't think we're allowed to say Eskimos anymore. I'm not really sure. So, that we could, so there's expressions that are out there that talk about the traits that people have in their personalities that make them more likely to be successful in a sales role. So top sales performers typically possess this unique set of personality traits combined with learned skills and a learned process, and they follow this repetitive defined process that make them successful. So companies are responsible for training and developing the process, and they're responsible for hiring the people that have got the natural tendencies to be great salespeople, and also the natural tendencies to follow a process. Some people have natural tendencies to be super creative and different and not follow a process. So we got to make sure that we're hiring the right people. So if I was in the room and I was standing there with a white board in front of me, as we used to do for these presentations, I'd be asking you questions like, what do you think are the behaviors and the personality traits of great salespeople? And I'd be writing down the things as you yell them out, and you'd be saying a positive attitude, tenacious, never giving up, persistent kind of people who just keep on trying. They need to be friendly and able to develop a rapport or relationships with people. They need to be inquisitive. If I have a great group in front of me and they're yelling out the traits, they talk about being great listeners, that salespeople listen to what customers are saying so that they can respond appropriately and that they can address their needs, wants, fears, hopes, and desires. And so great listeners. Outgoing and communicative, not so bashful that they are not going to speak up and speak out, but being dynamic and outgoing and active. And so very often we see great salespeople who are, great joke tellers and great storytellers. And by the way, storytelling is an incredible skill that people have that they use in a sales process. great salespeople also are typically, especially if they're successful over the long term, over the life cycle of their career, they want to be supportive and helpful. You know, some salespeople, I don't know, Glengarry, Glenn Ross, um, they know that just need to make the sale regardless of whether or not it's right or wrong, whether it's best for the customer. But people who have got long careers of being successful in sales have a need to be supportive and helpful to people so that they're making up and making the right choices. So we hear a lot about consultative sales. So the consultative salesperson is helping the customer to buy the right things, to make the right choices. And when a customer feels that their consultative salesperson is on their side, their advocate to help them make the right choice, then very often more successful. Great salespeople are great problem solvers, creative problem solvers, seeing barriers to moving forward, problems in the financing, problems in the decision-making process, problems in the information or the matching of candidates to customers, or different challenges that arise from various decision makers with varying and different perspectives on what the right decision will be. And so great salespeople are often great problem solvers. And of course, people are going to yell out confident. And we're going to talk a little bit about confidence in the next screen, in a trait that we call assertiveness. And of course, they need to be believable, which means they have to be honest. But also, I think it's important that great salespeople are believers. Not just believable, but believers, believers in their company, believers in their product and service, believers in their ability to make a meaningful difference in the lives of the people that they serve, believers that they are right and that they can help contribute to a positive change for our customers. And so we often use personality profiling tools that will help us to assess the traits, the predominant, predictable, recurring themes in a person's personality that came to them through some combination of nature, having it in their DNA, born with some of these traits, and nurture, some that were nurtured as a child and through their adolescence and development, and then through their training and their professional experiences and learning the skills, and combining this combination of personality traits with learned skills until eventually it really defines the person's personality so that they become these predominant or these dominant recurring themes in the way that people act. And there are all kinds of personality profiling tools out there. The important thing is that those, very many of them, like this one, which is actually called traits, like the very many of them are all based upon the exact same behavioral psychology, and quite frankly, behind the same database of information that has been collected since the 1940s from people being asked questions, hearing their answers, documenting those answers, which are behaviors, then mapping those behaviors back to what drives that behavior. So let's say, for example, you're very organized and clean person. And so we might take a look at the detail orientation trait, say that people who have got a trait in their personality that we'll call the title detail orientation, this one down here of the four, detail orientation, that they're likely to behave or exhibit behaviors that they're going to be very structured, very organized, their T's crossed, their I's dotted, their socks folded and put in the right drawer, their bed made in the morning, their desk clear of paper, and things filed away in the right place. So we can take a look at traits in a person's personality, and then we can track backwards and say, when people have these traits, they're likely to exhibit these types of behaviors. And every one of the tools that you might use uses different language to describe the traits, but they're all very similar. They all come off from this concept of what's called the Big Six or ocean. And different profiling tools will describe those Big Six differently, and they'll break them down into, like in this case into 7 traits. And they will all ask questions using different tools, sometimes using a piece of paper and a pen and filling out a dots or putting things on a scale or making a choice between one thing and another. And we can eventually become, quite frankly, quite accurate about what a person's predominant, predictable, recurring themes in their personality are. And most of the personality surveys that exist in the world that have been validated and done hundreds of thousands or millions of times are really quite accurate. And what we found is that successful salespeople in the recruitment and staffing services industry are somewhat assertive. They are results oriented and focused and self-confident and bold, and they'll take risks, and they'll ask for something knowing the risk of hearing no. And they'll be bold enough to say, "Oh, really? Obviously, you've got a reason for saying that. What are your reasons?" And they'll challenge the person and ask them to explain why they said no. And then they'll engage in conversation to overcome the no's and to address the challenges that exist. So having this confidence to present a candidate that might not be perfect for a job order that might not be perfect, and so they might be a perfect match. But a person who is risk averse, who seeks harmony and only wants to be diplomatic and cautious and conservative in the way that they approach things, is going to have a very difficult time in presenting candidates to a customer, because there's a pretty good chance customers are going to say no. There's a pretty good chance that customers are going to say, "I don't know, I don't think so. What about this? What about that? Yeah, I see this here. Doesn't it mean that something is not going to work?" And so the risk adverse person, without the courage, without the ego, you hear these words: courage, ego, assertiveness, risk taking, bold. These are the kinds of people that in sales are more likely to be successful. Now, of course, an extremely bold person can also be argumentative, and they can be disagreeable. And in some of the very credible things, we talk about disagreeability. And they define a person's disagreeability. And so we combine together this assertiveness traits with social ability, which is the need, want, and desire to be liked and to like others, to be social, to be persuasive and enthusiastic, but drawing people into their circle. I think I made up the word woofulness, to woo them into their circle. The kinds of people, when they walk into the room, people look up and smile at them, and their eyes attach, and they sort of have this agreeing nod, like, "Hey man, I'm coming over to talk to you as soon as I finish this. I'm here to see you too, that you're important to me." A highly social person with assertiveness can sit behind you at a light, and the light turns green, but you're not looking, and somehow they know how to do the friendly honk, not the angry aggressive honk. Because the angry aggressive honk shows a degree of impatience, which we're going to talk about next, and assertiveness, the boldness to say, "Hey man, get going." But the friendly honk has got this sociability, like, "Hey, let's keep moving along here, team." And so it's an incredible, unspecific thing that it's hard to measure when you can put together assertiveness, the person who wants to make all the decisions and be in control, with sociability that makes you feel like you're part of it, you're liked and you're respected while they're controlling the scenario. And then we combine that together with patience, or in this case, to the left of center, impatience, a need to multitask, to be proactive, to put many balls in the air at the same time, to be starting new things before they finish the last, to be responsive and quick, and to talk and at a faster pace, and to be thinking quickly and engaging people. And very often handling two phones. Hey, can you hang on for a second? I'll be right back to you. They put them on hold. They say, hello, this is Steve. May I help you? And they say, yeah, I can be with you in 1 second. Do you mind if you hold? I'm just finishing something up. I'll wait 30 seconds. Great. And they go back to the other call, and they can do this working back and forth, multitasking, making people feel as though they're being respected because of their sociability, but the impatience of not allowing one person to go to their voicemail, wanting to move their deals toward closure. In the recruitment and staffing services industry, the temporary help, and in the placement industry, time kills deals. The more minutes, hours, days, and weeks, and particularly weekends, that exist in a deal will increase the likelihood that the deal is going to fail. Time kills deals. Shortening the deal means the more likelihood of success. So a person who calls and gives a temporary services company an order at 9 o'clock in the morning, and at 9:15 they call them back and say, we've got the candidate for you. They're going to start this afternoon. They're going to start tomorrow morning, and they confirm the deal. That deal is done. But if that call goes back to the customer at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, there's a pretty good chance that they've called somebody else because they got nervous that you were not going to do it. So having the ability to multitask and be impatient, so impatient that you can't wait. Think about this. You're interviewing a candidate who, during the interview, you find out that they've got skills that are really quite impressive. Knowledge of a particular application software or some tool that the customer also uses, but it doesn't say that on the resume. And so you say to the candidate, don't do this. You say to the candidate, hey, that's a pretty good skill. The customer's going to really like that. Can you go home after this interview and redo your resume to show that skill and email it to me? And then I will send it to the customer with this very important skill on it. Don't do that. You pull up your laptop and you say, hey, that's a very important skill. Do I have your permission to modify your resume and to put it in there right now? Because the customer is going to want that. And you put it in right then and there and save it. So that the moment that that person goes, sits in the lobby, you can present that candidate to the customer, and you can phone the customer and close the deal or set up the interview before the candidate even leaves your premises. Because an impatient person would do that. And a patient person would ask for permission for them to go home and modify their resume, and then you would lose the deal. Shorten the cycle, shorten the deal. Impatience is a trait that great salespeople have. Detail orientation is an interesting one because we look for people on the recruiting side, if their emphasis is on the recruitment side, to be somewhat more detail oriented, so they would be to the right of center on this particular graph, a little bit over here. Like structure, focus, put things in the right place at the right time, highly skilled in the things that you do, taking great care and making sure the things are put in the right place at the right time, the things are in your calendar, and people are confirmed and secondly confirmed and reconfirmed about the interview or the thing that's going to happen. And great salespeople are a little less detailed because they know that in order to move the deal forward, the details can be completed later. Now, we don't want to be so unstructured and self-reliant on the left-hand side of detail orientation that we miss appointments, can't remember people's phone numbers, don't have their email readily available, can't find the candidate or remember their name. That type of detail orientation, less detail, would be harmful. Too much detail, paralysis by analysis, focusing too much on perfection before we move the steps in the process forward, would probably not be great for a salesperson. So we very often see salespeople with their detail orientation somewhere around neutral, not bad, not overly good. We also have these traits, a trait called behavioral adaptability. So when a person has a natural trait to act in a particular way, and they're put into a situation where they need to act differently. So let's say, for example, a person is very passive, non-aggressive, compliant, non-competitive, and they're put into a competitive situation, they're going to feel a lot of stress. Let's say, for example, we've got a person who's not terribly social, not super outgoing, and they have to speak in public. They're going to feel a lot of stress because they're going to have to act in a way that does not come naturally to them. So we talk about the leopard spots don't change. So if we think of each one of these dots and where the person might be on an ideograph as the dots on that leopard, and then they have to behave in a particular way that's different from where that dot is. Every time a person is asked or required to behave in a way that's different from their dot, they feel stress. And when they feel stress, they don't necessarily do it well, or they avoid doing it, or they put priority into something else. And so we know that these natural traits that came through nurture and nature are deeply ingrained in our personality. And we know that people have difficulty in changing, except for there is a trait called behavioral adaptability, which gives some people this chameleon-like skill to be able to temporarily move off their dots and act differently. To act differently without feeling too much stress. So, for example, I'll just give you an example for me. Of course, I'm an assertive person and a social person and an impatient person. And as a result of that, I can do presentations like this and I can tell stories. And I have no problems in talking and talking a lot if it's necessary. But when I'm put into a situation where I'm with a customer, and we talked earlier about listening, I can very easily use my behavioral adaptability to make a conscious decision to not talk. I make a conscious decision to do what I call guerrilla listening, which is this active participation in listening where you turn your chin and nod your head, and you make hand motions, and you lift your eyes and your eyebrows, and you look at a person with awe and respect, and you send messages, nonverbal messages, while they're talking to let them know I'm listening. And so by having behavioral adaptability, we can make the conscious decision to not interrupt, to not talk. Some people don't have great behavioral adaptability. You think about Leonard Nimoy, who played Spock in the original Star Trek. The whole thing about him was that he was a logical person with zero behavioral adaptability. You could always predict exactly how he was going to behave. And as a matter of fact, some of the most compelling storylines were when, you see, Spock, I'm off topic now, but Spock had a human mother, and so he could invoke emotion into his decision-making if he made a conscious decision to do that. He would logically decide, I'm going to act emotionally. I'm going to confuse people because they are going to think I'm acting logically, and then they save the universe or save Captain Kirk from the enemy. And So this was a recurring theme in the plot line where there were these personality traits that were deeply ingrained and part of the stress that existed that created drama in the show was when people had to act off of their dots. We've got another thing called emotional control, which I just kind of addressed with Leonard Nimoy and Spock from Star Trek. Some people are extremely logical thinkers, and other people are extremely sensitive, empathetic, emotional thinkers. Extremely empathetic, emotional, and tender-minded thinkers can't even imagine how logical thinkers come to the conclusions that they come to sometimes. For example, a highly emotional person might never give a letter of termination or layoff in the 2 weeks before Christmas. It would never occur to them that that was even a possibility that you could do that. And yet the logical thinker would do the math and say, yeah, it's kind of important that we do this sooner than later so that they are aware. I don't want to pretend that we're doing something, give people false hope, have them spend a whole bunch of money over Christmas, and then find out on New Year's Day that they don't have a job anymore. Let's use our logic and give them the notice right away so that they can logically manage their finances and logically plan their life, and we can logically avoid a legal lawsuit. And so different people with different personalities view situations entirely differently. And they solve their problems and approach things in an entirely different way. And we know that in sales, people who are a little bit logical, because you got to get it right, are probably more effective than people who are a little bit emotional. But this particular theme is on a scale, unlike these ones over here are left to right of center. These ones down here are on a scale from 1 to 10. And so this is really only a 5.5, which says that they can evoke emotion when it's necessary, that they can make people fear losing the deal, that they can make them feel happy about making the right choice and proud of the thing that they just bought. So they can evoke emotion and use emotion through the sales process, but generally having logic kind of drive them. A salesperson who's down here, 1 or 2, highly emotional, is likely to not close a lot of deals because they're not going to be making logical presentations to logical buyers. And then, of course, we look at creativity, and we see that over here, 6 out of 10 on the scale of creativity means that we're able to take disparate information, different parts of things, and put them together so that we can maybe structure an offer that's attractive to a candidate, or that we can overcome an objection by dealing with things in a particular way, or we can find out information by using a creative thing, or we can use our creativity to go into the database to do searches to find people that might match that the database normally wouldn't present. So these are the kinds of personality traits that we look for in great salespeople. And the important thing is this, that if you don't feel like you have that trait, it's not your dominant trait, or at least it didn't fall on the scale the way that we just presented it, it's important to know that those traits come with behaviors. So you don't need to change your personality. You only need to ask the question, if I'm a passive person and I need to be more assertive, what behavior would the assertive person exhibit today? And can I make a conscious decision to behave that way? Which doesn't mean you changed as a person or you changed your personality. It just means that you made a conscious decision to exhibit a behavior. And they're 2 different things. The natural tendency for a person with a personality trait is to behave in a particular way. So it's easy. They're not moving off their dot. And when a person's dot is over here, but the behavior we need is over here, we have to make a conscious decision to make that behavior. And it's tough. So the terms sales and marketing are often interchanged and used combined, and they're not to mean the same thing. and we can have sales and marketing representatives, but very often those sales and marketing representatives are not involved in marketing at all. They're only involved in using the collateral and the brands and the things that are developed by marketing people, so that when they're making sales calls, their sales calls are consistent with what the marketing says, so that there's this congruency between the marketing brand and the salesperson's behaviors, what they're saying and how they're selling. And so the title or description of sales and marketing is often meant to describe a salesperson who regularly utilizes these marketing tools, but isn't necessarily the person who is responsible for developing the marketing. The marketing people develop the logo, the brand, the taglines, the websites, the brochures, the pricing. And the salespeople typically are attempting to leverage those things consistently out in the world. So sales and marketing both impact lead generation, and then obviously they both have an effect on revenue. So, to simplify it, sales refers to all these activities that directly lead, that there is a direct linkage between the sales activity and the possibility of a customer purchasing a good or a service. Whereas marketing is the process of getting people interested in the goods or service so that the salespeople can sell it. And so marketing develops leads and develops interest and creates credibility and creates an environment for the salespeople to be successful. Sales is sales and marketing is marketing. So marketing creates brand awareness and it creates interest, and it's intended to attract potential customers and to improve the lead generation, while sales is the active process of proactively creating. Well, you can proactively create leads by going out there and saying, hey, do you happen to know somebody who also wants to buy this? Asking for a referral, that's a proactive lead generation. That's sales. It's not marketing. That's sales. So they're proactively, in an active way, trying to find out new leads and new people that they can sell to, and then convincing those people to buy product or service. So some examples of some marketing activities are advertising, branding, direct mail campaigns, email broadcast campaigns, blogging and intellectual and educational content, pay-per-click Google advertising and Facebook advertising and internet advertising, event promotions and sponsorships, putting your name on the bag at the conference or giving golf balls to the charity, collateral, the development of collateral, such as brochures and business cards and items that you give away, and coffee cups, dipstick cleaners. At one time in around 1990, a large multinational company was giving away dipstick cleaners, the thing that you use to wipe the oil stick in your car when you go to check to see the level of your oil. And it was on a magnet that went on the engine or under the hood of the car. And so when you pulled it out, you didn't. Most people use a cloth or a paper towel. And I never understood why that marketing collateral with the company's name on it was going to be hidden underneath the hood of the car and only looked at 4 times a year. Crazy. Some marketing things are good, some are not so good. Golf balls. You don't really expect a golf ball to be a great marketing tool. I mean, most people lose them pretty quickly. But the act of giving something of value that's appreciated to a person is the actual part of the marketing. It's not necessarily the logo on the ball that continually reminds you, I'll buy that, I'll buy that, I'll buy that. It's when they look at the ball and go, oh, Steve gave me that. What a generous gift. So you take a look at how you use your collateral and your marketing activities in order to, so how are they distributed? How are they used? What is the messaging that's supposed to be on them? So other examples might be things like white papers, writing things that are going to be posted on the internet so people can look things up, and they've got some SEO potential to them, and so on. So one particular company for the last 35 or 40 years that I can remember, has produced an annual salary survey. And companies take a look at that annual salary survey every year to sort of compare how their salaries compare to all the other people with the same industries and same job titles. So that is a type of white paper that is educational and helpful, that helps to market the brand of the staffing services. Association memberships, saying that you belong, belonging and having the credibility that you belong. Belonging to ACSESS is somewhat similar to, say, somebody else belonging to the Chamber of Commerce or to the Better Business Bureau or to a quality ISO organization or some other quality organization. So having your license, having your certificates on the wall, your logos, your slogans, your taglines, coupons and promotions, these are all things that are intended to improve your reputation so that salespeople will have an easier process and more people that they can sell to. But all sellers are not marketing representatives in the sense that they're developing those things, but they are marketers too, because they actively participate in these, using the marketing collateral and in marketing activities by going to volunteer at the golf tournament, or to stand at the registration desk of the speaker event, or to post and distribute things on their Facebook or their LinkedIn page that are developed by the company. So great salespeople leverage marketing collateral so that they can be consistent with and promoting the brand that they represent. So the sales activities are things like telesales, cold calling, prospecting, warm calling. That's when you get a lead from somebody and you follow up. They phoned you and you call them back, or somebody gave you a lead and you followed up on it. Door knocking. By the way, door knocking still works, particularly in light industrial. Referral generation and follow-up. Inbound sales desk, people on the order desk, they're involved in the sales because it's probably the easiest type of sale, because the customer is probably phoning you with an order, but they might not be buying the right thing. They might not be buying enough. Could be buying more. They might buy one thing from you and a similar thing from somebody else, and the person on the order desk can convince them to buy all of it from you. Data management, putting your information in the system, documenting it, using it in a way that's all part of sales. Client presentations, telling stories. These are all part of sales. Proposals, writing proposals, submitting quotations, sales. Qualifying your leads, putting them in priority order, learning and evaluating information about your customer prospects and what their buying processes is part of sales. So doing the research is part of sales. If it's doing research about a specific prospect, it's part of sales. If it's doing research about the industry and how you might position yourself, that's probably part of marketing. But if it's about a customer and how they buy, who the buyers are, what the buying process is, how you get on the list, how you get in the door, what are the dominant decision criteria, who the contributors are to the decision-making process, and who the final decision makers are, learning these things are all part of sales. Price and term negotiations, part of sales. Contract and agreement authorizations, getting people to sign here, part of sales. Of course, closing candidates and closing deals, problem solving and relationship management, all part of sales. In our industry, whether you're in recruitment, executive search, placement, staffing, temporary help, contract, payroll, doesn't matter. Service is everything. So we go back to one of the earlier slides when I talked about the 360 desk is probably more pervasive in our industry, where people do everything, including sales. And that means that while you're servicing a customer, while you're taking care of their problems, while you're following up on timesheets that weren't accurate or correct, while there's some miscommunication, while there's a problem with the temp who didn't show up for work on time today, while you're doing those things, you're in fact making sales calls. You're convincing the customer to have and hold a relationship of trust and confidence so that they will continue to and will do more business with you. There's some terminology that we use in the industry that are often misinterpreted. By the way, we're going to take a break at 2:30, and we're going to take a 10-minute break just as we have in the past and other sessions, and we're going to come back after that. The term funnel versus pipeline. So the sales funnel is when we try to get many leads, as many as we can, or many leads, and that as we qualify them into potential buyers, we narrow it down to the ones that are most likely to buy from us. And a sales pipeline. So you say, oh, they're in the funnel, they're in the pipeline. And very often we hear people use these terms interchangeably. They're not the same. In the funnel means I haven't qualified them yet. There's some place in the funnel, and we need to figure out whether or not they're going to be a buyer or a good buyer, what kind of buyer they're going to be. And if they're in the sales pipeline, it means they're a qualified buyer, and we're moving them through the steps and stages in our selling and buying process. And I want you to think, instead of it being a sales pipeline, that it's a buying pipeline. It's the exact same thing. Except for when it's a sales pipeline, it's the things that you need to do in order to move them through the steps in the process. And if we call it a buying pipeline, we take a look at the things that they need to do, that they need to accomplish, that they need to have satisfied before they will put their stamp on the deal, before they'll close it. And so I like to talk about the sales funnel and the buying pipeline, not the sales pipeline, but in fact, I'm just saying let's change the word because it changes our perception of what the pipeline really is. So the sales funnel returns to a process of starting with many leads at the, we call it top of funnel. You'll see TOF in many online marketing tools, top of funnel, and we'll see a BOF, bottom of funnel. So if they're in the top of the funnel, they haven't been vetted yet, then we refine them and we work them and eliminate some until they eventually come BOF, bottom of funnel. And the sales pipeline refers to the systematic process of working and moving them through the process in this workflow that is intended to eventually result in sales. So we see this traditional sales funnel where we get the leads, and then we start to qualify them, and then we determine, can we get them engaged in this sales activity, and then we convert them into a customer. And I wanted to put a graphic of a sales funnel there, but my graphic art skills aren't that good. So lead generation, where do leads come from? It's really kind of important to kind of think about where leads come from, because different sources of leads have different value, typically. I'm generalizing, but a marketing lead comes from advertising and websites and unsolicited referrals and through brand name recognition and through the sign on the wall and through search engine optimization and PPC. And it's a marketing generated lead, and it comes from an active buyer because they saw something that was of interest to them and they contacted you. They said, hey, my administrative assistant just told me this morning that they're leaving, and I saw every day I drive by your billboard, or I receive these emails from you about once a month, or last month you sent me a list of available candidates and there was one on there that looked exactly like what I'm going to hire for. So these are marketing things that cause the person to call you. So this lead is hot. A sales activity can be very cold. Because if you knock on a door, make a cold call, or phone someone and say, hey, can you tell me who the person is who's responsible for this? And then you start talking to them, you have no idea where that's going to go. And so if you're soliciting a referral, if you're following up on a campaign, if you're trying to reactivate old clients and going through old lists, these sales generated lists are often a result of an action that you've taken toward a passive buyer. Somebody who wasn't necessarily looking for you, and you're getting into their space saying, is now the right time? Do you have a need? If you make an active sales call to a person and you can find out that they actually have a need now or typically soon for the thing that you sell, then you've got an opportunity to start to move them through the pipeline. Whereas a marketing lead is somebody who says, I have a need, and I'm calling you to find out whether or not you're the right person I should be talking to. So we use the other terms, a marketing lead and a sales lead. We have other terms that we call an active lead and a passive lead. So the active lead are prospects or potential buyers who actively seeking or researching a source of supply. So that's the one that came from marketing. That's the one that had a passive referral. In other words, somebody told them about you and then they just called you. So this is an active lead. It's a warm lead because you know something and they tell you something that's meaningful about them as a buyer and their want or their need or their desire or their whole or their the reason that they're calling you. Whereas a passive leads are prospects or potential buyers who purchase your service, but now they're not a lead if they don't ever purchase your service. If they say, oh no, we're a gas station, we've got 2 employees here, and every employee that's ever come here before has been a member of my family, and we don't use employment agencies, never have, never will. There's no way I'm going to call for a temp to come here and handle tens of thousands of dollars worth of cash without having gone through our whole process. No. So you might say, okay, gas station, not a lead. So a passive leads are prospects or buyers who purchase the type of service that you sell, but they're not actively seeking or researching alternate sources of supply. These are the ones that salespeople learn to or convince themselves that selling is not fun because they got this list of 200 passive leads, companies, organizations, people, and titles that they suspect are likely to be using somebody, someplace, sometime, or could or would or need to hire somebody, someplace, sometime, and that you just got to keep on working them until you're there because 1, you created credibility. 2, you got there at the right time. And 3, they actually ended up having a need for the thing that you sell, and they remembered you. And so this is hard. This is the long sell. When you hear people talk about how many calls it takes to make a deal, they're usually talking about the cold lead, the passive lead. So active or warm leads allow the seller to move quickly and engage interest and develop rapport. And warm leads are more inclined to discuss and disclose information and tell you the truth. Whereas passive lead salespeople, the new business development people who are banging on doors, they will use the expression, which is not necessarily true, but they'll use the expression, all buyers are liars. And they say that because they're out there talking to people who don't want to disclose their information. They don't want to tell you about their needs and about what the process is. They're putting a barrier up to rapport. When a person is walking through a shopping mall with no specific intent to buy something. Now, that's not me. I only go into a shopping mall when I know exactly what I'm going to buy, exactly where I'm going to go. I walk in, I look at the thing, and I go, there's the Apple store, and I find the quickest path to walk there. I go in there, I ask for exactly what I want. I don't buy anything else. I buy that thing, and I get it as quickly as I can. That's just me. But there's other people who go to shopping malls, and they walk, and they wander in and out of stores. And in the back of their mind, that person might say, oh, I need to have a blouse or shirt, and it needs to have a collar, and it's going to go with this suit or this blazer, and I'd like it to be made out of this material because that'll go with the material of the suit or of the blazer, and I'm going to probably wear this thing at this event that's coming up. I mean, no need. The event isn't for a month from now, but if I see that color and that size and that style and it doesn't have a pocket or it does have a, whatever, you know, then I'll buy it. So they walk into a store and they're kind of looking around and the salesperson walks up to them and says, may I help you? And you know what their response is? It is, nope, just browsing, thank you. And then the passive salesperson who doesn't have assertiveness says, I'll just be over there. You ask me if you need me. And then they go back to folding clothes and they never sell anything to them. So the salesperson who's assertive and aggressive needs to somehow nurture, develop a rapport of trust and confidence to get them to disclose the information that they don't want to give so that they can figure out how they can be of service to that person and then overcome their barriers to moving forward. And so we know that if it's a passive lead, if it's a cold lead, it is hard. And if it's an active lead, it's easier. So we got to do both. When you don't have a passive lead to work on, you should be working on creating active leads. When you don't have an active lead to work on, you should be creating passive leads. Differentiators. So you always have to ask the question, what makes you different from all the others? Because quite honestly, I've been around this industry for 43 years. And most people, most companies think that they're really quite different from all the rest. But having worked with many companies and consulted many companies and been inside their organizations and hired thousands of people who have worked in hundreds and thousands of different places, I can tell you that it's pretty difficult to differentiate yourself. We all have software, we all have features, we all have benefits, we all have geographical locations, we all have types of jobs that we fill, we all have people with skills that do certain things. So the first thing is you got to remember that not everybody is an ACSESS member. And so if you're going to differentiate yourself from others, then you say, are you an ACSESS member? You can make the implication that you've got a commitment to professionalism, to ethics, to legality, to guidelines and process, that you want to be better and you've made a commitment to it. You can make a difference by telling people by being demonstrative, by putting it on your business card and in your email signatures that you have got your CPC, that you've acquired your CPC designation, and that you're the kind of person who's made a commitment to be better. The biggest differentiator at the end of the day, because some people have bullhorn and some people have something else. Some people advertise on Indeed and some people advertise on something, other job boards. Some people have great websites and some people have different great websites. Some people are on LinkedIn and they've got lots of contacts, and some people have got equally many different contacts. At the end of the day, the only thing that you can absolutely say for certain that is totally unique, not like any others, is you. Being the person that you are, making the commitment that you make, being the promise keeper that you are, having the skills that you have, having the ability to nurture a relationship with people, with your personality, with your traits, with your skills. Nobody like you, nobody exactly like you. And so your biggest differentiator is you. So we talk about differentiators in terms of the company, and we talk about differentiators in terms of the person. So why customers buy is very often because of a company's features and benefits. So a feature might be that they have got $5 million worth of theft insurance, and they're a bank or they're a financial institution or an insurance company or somebody who handles a lot of financial stuff and valuable things. And so they've got a feature might be that they've got $5 million worth of theft insurance, and that they will name the customer to be the benefit of that if somebody steals from the customer. So the benefit is that we have lower risk. The feature is insurance. So very often a feature or a benefit or a company can solve a problem, i.e., they might specialize in a particular type of forklift operator, and that they've got only and the 200 of these forklift operators that operate just that one brand of equipment, and that the customer has got that one brand of equipment and they can never find fork truck operators. So it solves a problem for them, or it meets a criteria. The criteria might be that the company has got financial independence that proves to the controller of the buyer, that proves to their senior executive, you've got the financial credibility to make your payroll and finance your payroll on an ongoing basis so that there's never a stoppage in service. And so the criteria might be credibility, financial credibility, or reputation. Reliability, it might be how often you are down, how many employees that you have, your history of being able to do certain things at a particular fill rate. If you've got rules and policies, if you are an ACSESS member and you've got policies on the wall, if you are a part of a ISO quality organization, you've got rules and policies in place. If you never ever send a person out without having done a credit check or a background check or a 3 reference checks, if these rules and policies are in place that provide a benefit that help overcome a person's needs or wants or addresses their fears, then these are features of a company. Being able to do things in a way through pricing and through time that we can give them savings and efficiencies, timing and efficiencies. These are all features of the company. Keep in mind this, that while you're describing your company's features and benefits and the problems that you solve, there are at least 5 other companies that could be described somewhat similar to yours. So now it comes down to the person. Did you call at the right time? Did you always call when they never had a need, or did you finally call them when they do have a need? Were you convenient? Could they find your email address? Could they find you in their email? Did they have that business card in their thing? Were you in their contacts? Could they Google and get your phone number? Could they look you up on LinkedIn? Was it convenient for them to get you? So did you call at the right time? And was it convenient for them to get in contact with you? Did you answer your phone? Did you develop and nurture a relationship of trust and confidence? And did that relationship mean something about whether or not you were honest, or you had a skill, or you were reliable? Did they see the kind of effort that you're going to make? Did you influence their belief in the kind of effort that you're going to put into making them a priority? And were you the expert? Be the expert. Did you help them, consult them, advise them, inform them? Did you show that you knew when you heard about the job order? Did you understand what that software meant or what that job really does? Were you a knowledgeable expert? And so we need to differentiate ourselves both by our companies and by our person. And then when customers want to buy, by the way, buyers change suppliers for a bunch of reasons. The most likely reason is that they were indifferent. Some because their current supplier failed, or because their current supplier died, or because their current supplier became too expensive, or because the current supplier, the relationship person, doesn't work there anymore. There's a lot because the current supplier provided poor service on a repeated basis and harmed their relationship and their reliability. The most common reason why buyers change suppliers is because they are indifferent, because they can't tell the difference. The most common reason this indifference means they don't care between you and the other guy, because you both look the same. Now, it doesn't mean that all companies are the same. It doesn't mean that if there's 100 companies trying to get the business, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 of them made it to the top list that they were differentiated because of all the things on the previous screen. But at the end of the day, they'll change from their current supplier to a new supplier because they don't feel like there's a huge risk involved in making that decision to change because they can't tell the difference. And by the way, there was I don't know how many years ago, before your time, I'm sure, a company called ABC Detergent. And ABC Detergent always had 2 twins that were dressed in exactly the same clothes, and those 2 twins would go, these children would go out and play in the mud, and they'd come back in, and then mom would take one of the shirts and put them in the Tide detergent dishwasher or washing machine. I don't know why she had 2 washing machines, but she had 2 children, and she had 2 types of soap. She had ABC detergent. And then she would put the other one in the ABC detergent, and then they'd put the clothes back on the children again. And the children were exactly the same. They were identical twins. And their slogan was, I can't tell the difference. Can you tell the difference? And they sold it for 15 cents less. And so the only difference was 15 cents savings. And so they knew that through research that people feel comfortable in changing their supplier when they can't tell the difference. So people will take a look at short-term temporary contract workers and they'll say, first off, do they have a short-term requirement? Do you offer short-term services? Do they have the need to transition? They're getting a replacement person, but there's a transition time. Do they have that need? Do you offer that service? Is it a non-core role like an administrative assistant or like a laborer in the warehouse or a pick and packer or a call center representative? Or is it, their controller? Maybe they're not going to use temporary or contract people for their controller, but they will for a non-core role. Is that what you supply? If they're uncertain of how long it's going to last for, maybe they don't want to make a commitment directly to their company because they don't want to get involved in possibly termination pay and all the things, but they know that if they call a temporary company, a staffing company, that the whole nature of it is that what you supply? Are you able to turn around quickly and fill the job because they just found out now and they need somebody for 8 o'clock tomorrow morning? Can you and do you provide quick response to fill time? Is there protection, as I already kind of mentioned, in termination? In other words, that at the end of 3 months or 6 months or a year, at the end of that maternity leave, this job is going to be over and there's not going to be a need for or an obligation to pay termination or severance pay. Do you have people in the queue? Do they have any kinds of direct or indirect cost savings? These are the things that customers look for, and if they feel indifferent, they will change. And on the recruitment and the search side, on the placement side, on the executive search side and the placement side, we look at the supply availability. They can't fill it on their own. They're trying to keep that job confidential. Do you offer confidentiality? They're looking to do it quickly. Can you do it quickly? Can you find and present candidates tomorrow or Monday? Can you reduce the closing cycle for them from time to hire, from time to order to time to hire? Are there any indirect cost savings that come as a result of paying you a fee, but them not having to do it with the internal costs and expenses? Very often a recruitment and search is for a more core role than, say, for example, temporary help. Do you specialize in the thing that they have specialization, that they need specialization in? Do you have a process that you can explain to them? I know one gentleman who's been in the industry for a long, long time, longer than me. And I know it's hard to believe. And super, super successful on the executive search side. And his entire shtick is selling the process. When he gets an order, when I refer him an executive search, he goes to the company and he sits down and he describes to them what he's going to do and what the company's responsible for doing and what everyone's going to do together and what the timeline for each one of those steps in the process is, and he gets them to sign off on that. And so he doesn't go in there and talk about features and benefits. He talks about a professional process. They want access to a talent pool that maybe they don't have. They maybe want guarantees. These are the kinds of things that people look for when they're going to take the unrisky decision. In other words, they can't tell the difference and they want to change suppliers. So if they have no internal supplier, or if something's gone wrong with them, they'll want to change. If they're dissatisfied with them, they'll want to change. Mostly it's because they're indifferent. They're not particular about who solves the problem. And so if you're there at the right time and you fulfill all of the check boxes, likelihood that through timing and convenience, you're to the right place at the right time, that you can be found easily, that you're going to get that business. So salespeople are always talking about, I gotta be the best salesperson in the world. We have to have the best process in the world. We have to have the best features in the world. We have to have the best database. We have to have the best software. We have to have the best logo. We have to have the best coffee mug that we can give away. When in fact, you need to be good enough and you need to be there so that they're not particular. In other words, they don't have a reason to not do business with you. That you're convenient at the right time, the right place, easily found, easily recalled, easily remembered, easy to do business with. They're going to look at tender processes. They're going to say, hey, we have to do it this way. This is the process. It's got to go to tender. It's got to go to open tender. You have to make a bid. You have to have the 3 packages, the pre-qualification package, the services packages, and the price package. So maybe that's the way that they do things, and you don't have any way around it. Maybe some companies only deal with price. They'll say, once you meet all the qualifications, then lowest price wins from this point on. It might be because of the relationship. It might be because they trust you. It could be because they're your sister or your brother or your cousin or your best friend, or it could be because you didn't know them at all. But somehow the salesperson was able to nurture and develop relationships of trust and confidence. Sometimes it's about response. They say, can you do this? And you say, yeah, I can do that. And you meet my candidate. I've got a candidate for you tomorrow. Sometimes it's about innovation and features. So right now, the big boom, the reason why the stock market is still on the positive side, because most normal companies, I'm saying normal traditional companies, haven't necessarily done so super great in the last year. But man, if it's got to do with AI, companies with, like, even Amazon, which is looking to grow, I think 90% in the next 3 years in their business plan, but their entire business plan is based around AI. It's all based around automation and AI. They don't really think they're going to hire more people. They're going to grow by 90% on the plan of using AI. In the turn of the century, around 2000, it was all about the internet. Who was going to be able to do their recruitment online, find their candidates, vet their candidates, submit their candidates online. In around 2005 to 2005, it was really about things like VMS tools, vendor management tools for large corporate customers wanting to automate the process so that it could all integrate into their accounting systems. So some companies are driven by innovation and features, and that's how they're going to go forward in making their decisions. So we've got some people that are we mentioned up above, that some are price shoppers. Now, by the way, research has shown that if there's 10% or less in terms of a price, they're indifferent. 10% or less in terms of the highest to the lowest price, or 2 different prices. One's charging $44 an hour. The other's charging $41.60 an hour. That the customer's not likely to put a lot of emphasis on the $41.60 over the $44. They're kind of the same. Once they start to exceed 10% and they get into 15 to 20%, then customers, buyers start to notice that there's a meaningful difference in the price, and it might come into play. So now you've got some people that are price shoppers, and even their price shoppers under 10%. We need to talk to them how service creates value, that we're not selling the service on price. They're not buying on price. They need to buy value because at the end of the day, the value is going to get them greater profits. And they don't want to spend less. They want to make more. And so if all things ceteris paribus, Latin word phrase for meaning all things remain the same, if all things remain the same and nothing changes, and you can buy your inputs for 10% less, then you're going to have a greater profit at the end of the day. But usually that's not, all things don't remain exactly the same. It could be the time it takes to fill the deal. It could be the talent and the skills that they have in order to be um, more effective on the job. It could be the process that you follow is more efficient, reducing their internal costs through the process, causing different forms of savings, causing different forms of reliability, which reduces the likelihood of having to spend more money down the road. Hey, listen, you do something right the first time, it comes in at the efficient cost of the process. If you have to do it again and you have to fix it, very often the fix is 4 times more expensive than the first original process had it been done right in the first place. So is it more reliable? So when we talk to price shoppers, we need to change the terminology from price to value. Just looking at the clock. We need to do some territory planning. We have to define what we're going to sell, who buys what we sell, and which customers and why those customers buy. And once we can do that, we can develop a territory plan that is used for targeting the right prospective customers and implement activity goals for consistent sales growth over time. Now, remember, the active cold seller has got a longer sales process. And so if we define our product and our service and our territory, who we're selling to, what they buy and why they buy, then if we're going to have a long sales process, let's have a long sales process with customers who are more likely to be customers than having a long sales process where 10 or 20 or 50% of the people that we try to sell to in the first place never get to the bottom of the funnel because they never were a buyer in the first place. So we need to have a territory plan. So we define what we sell with a sales statement so that you, the salespeople, can remain focused and efficient in your targets. So you have to ask, what do you sell? Who do you sell it to? What is the purpose or the benefit of them buying it? Why do they need this thing? And so we want to be able to say very clearly to ourselves, and our managers need to say it to us. Or if you're the manager, you need to say it to your salespeople and the owners, and people need to be on the same page saying things like, I'm going to give you 2 or 3 examples. We provide light industrial temporary staffing services, if that's what you sell. And you sell to large businesses with warehouses and logistics operations to help them to respond quickly and cost effectively to unpredictable and rapid, unforeseen changes in both their supply, things coming into their distribution center, and their demand for the things going out of their distribution center. If that's what you specialize in, say it. Say it clearly so that you're not selling to little customers. So you're not selling to companies that have consistency in exactly the same thing every single day. So you're not selling to people who don't have this kind of need. Other examples of this sales statement might be things like, we provide confidential specialty recruitment services to assist companies in finding and hiring highly specialized and difficult to discover, say, for example, accounting and finance staff. So if you deal with accountants, controllers, financial analysts, bookkeepers, cost accountants, management accountants, if this is what you, asset management accountants, tax accountants, if these are the things that you specialize in, then say it. So that while you're trying to target market who you're selling to companies that have those roles in them, not to the gas station. We understand, here's another example. We understand and expertly source and match highly specialized contract information technology professionals to our customers for projects, effectively helping them to get their projects completed with the right skills, on time, and on budget. So if that's what you sell, then you don't want to be taking orders for everything. You don't want to be trying to sell everything to everybody. There might only be financial services companies, banks, trust companies, insurance companies. There might only be a certain target audience that you sell these IT people to. Our territory plan also covers, not so much nowadays as it did in the past, a geographical area. Now, the lower the wage of the job, the more important geographical area is. If it's a $400,000 a year job, it's likely that you can get a person in the East End to work in the West End. If it's a $400,000 job, you might be able to get a person to relocate from Montreal to Toronto, or from Calgary to Edmonton, or from, I don't know if you're ever going to get somebody to go from Alberta to Ontario. Oh my goodness, God forbid. But the higher the wage, the more senior the job, the less important geographical might be. And the lower the wage and the more homogeneous the job is, the more important geography would be. So, for example, I've got a steel customer in Brampton, or that I do consulting work with. Not that I don't do staffing. That I do consulting work with, and they've decided that they'll only hire people to work in their warehouse and distribution center who are within a 40-minute drive. Their history has shown that when they've got people that are over a 40-minute drive, regardless of all other things, family status, children, that with snow and with the location of their place and with traffic and construction, that people show up late or don't show up at all when they're more than 40 minutes away. And when they're under 40 minutes away, they've got a measurable and discernible improvement in their attendance and their turnover. So geography matters. Target market matters. The industry we're going to sell to, the processes that they follow, the technology that they use, the size of the company they are, the volume of business, the revenue that they generate, their financial credibility. So it could be, I only deal with little companies that are startups that are in the clothing industry. It could be that I only deal with that I try to only deal with automobile manufacturing companies that are multi-million or billion-dollar companies. It could be that I only deal with companies of this computer technology, because all of my computer technology consultants all fall into that category. Decide your target market. Decide your vertical, what you sell. I'm going to tell you right now, my experience has been over and over and over and over again, that if companies don't put up the firewall between their temp and their perm divisions, between their search and their temporary divisions, between their permanent placement and recruitment division and their contract divisions, if they try to treat them all as one 360 desk, one side wins. Great search recruiters and executive search recruiters don't do well at contract and temp. Great temp people don't do well at perm. Doesn't mean you're not going to do the occasional one, and it doesn't mean that you're not going to have the occasional administrative person you put on temp assignment and say, oh, we'd really like to hire that person into a full-time job. That's going to happen, but we're just talking about developing a plan, a territory plan. And if you're going to try to cross pollinate your verticals, which, by the way, doesn't mean that this vertical can't sell the importance of that vertical. Hey, if you're going to do business with us doing this, you should try our other division. If you're going to like our donuts, you should like our bread. They're made in two separate factories, but it's the same philosophy, the same leadership, the same management, the same technology. The bread manufacturers make great bread. Do business with them. You can cross-sell verticals, but don't intermingle your verticals. This is my opinion. This is my experience. It has been very rare, except for the smallest of boutique organizations that will take any order and fill anything. It is very rare that highly successful growing staffing and recruitment placement, contingency search, executive search companies do everything on the same desk. You can also define your territory by the disciplines, the rules, the job titles. So earlier on, I talked about the forklift operators of a particular type of equipment, particular brand of equipment. It can be that specialized. So you also have to ask the question, okay, it's break time, so I'm going to finish this slide, and then we're going to take a 10-minute break. We also have to ask a question, what's our selling model? What's our selling style? And we have to try to avoid trying to do everything all the time. Some companies are freakishly awesome at individual order selling, that they go after new business, they get individual orders, they get one order at a time. I'll give you an example. I own a home care company. That's one order at a time. You get a family that says, my mother needs caregivers and nurses, and you take care of them. And then next week you get a different family, and they've got a different location and a different schedule and different needs and a different family member and different language skills and different health issues. And it's one order at a time. So some businesses are individual orders with new business and new customers all the time. And some businesses are repeat orders and bulk orders. And they've got the contract with XYZ Global Corporation and the branches. And if there's a branch that from the staffing company in Edmonton, and XYZ Global Corporation has got facilities in Edmonton, then they do business with each other. And they do it in Mississauga and in Toronto and Halifax and all over the world and all over North America. Sometimes they're regional repeat bulk order customers. Sometimes they're one facility, but they always have 50 temps in the warehouse or 150 temps in the warehouse. So some of them are repeat bulk order customers. If that's your business model, then you're probably not going to do great at the individual new business development orders. You're probably going to be able to go after more repeat bulk orders. Remember the expression, more like this. Take a look at your 5 best customers that give you the vast majority of your revenue. And I'm going to guess that 20% of your customers generate 80% of your profit and your sales and your gross margins. Take a look at those and ask, how did we get them? Are they individual orders? Are they repeat orders? Did we get them through an RFP or a proposal? Did we get them? Did we become the master vendor of record? Or are we a sub-supplier on a vendor of record? Was it a global, national, or regional, or corporate participant, and your branch takes care of them? Was it a vendor management system? Was it your vendor management tool that you sold, that you got the customer involved in? Or were you an adopter? Did another staffing service, or did the customer go out and get their own VMS tool and say, hey, if you can integrate to our VMS tool, you'll get on board? I mean, I know one company in Toronto that the 80% of their business was as a sub-supplier, an adopter of other VMS suppliers, many VMS suppliers' tools. So all of their orders came from various VMS tools, and they developed software that said, go to our 10 customers' VMS tools, capture those orders, pull them all into one application software, so that on my desktop, when a recruiter came in the morning, they said, what do all of our customers on all of their VMS tools for all of their orders, put them on my screen and show me what priority they're in and who I should be working on and what I'm doing today. So figure out what your business model is. Avoid trying to do everything for everybody. Avoid the silver bullet syndrome, that one thing is the only thing you do. But figure out where you fit into these inbound lead generation, outbound proactive sales, individual orders, vendor management. Figure out your thing and build your business model and your strategy around that. So guys, it is now 2:35. We're going to take a break until 2:45. Please stay online. Don't leave the room. That'll require you to try to figure out how to get back in, and me now to let you back in again. Let's take a break, and we'll see you back here in 10 minutes. Okay, thanks. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We're back again for the second half of our presentation on staffing industry sales. Before we get started up again, I know that everyone is muted, but at this point in time, is there anyone that has any questions or concerns about the first half of our presentation? Just if you do, please just unmute your microphone and jump right in there. And if not, we're going to rumble ahead, and we're going to try to get finished here before 4 o'clock. So we have to ask the question about qualified buyers. We talk about that funnel and qualified buyers. And so we have to ask the questions, do the prospects already buy? I will say this, please don't waste your time on trying to convince non-buyers to buy. I don't mean people who buy from somebody else to buy from you. Those are good prospects. But in all of my years in business, it is very, very rare. It's a long selling cycle, and it comes with huge risks to take someone who's never used a staffing company before and spend the time to convince them that this is the business model that they should pursue. It's possible that they could get a new human resources manager, or they could get a new department manager who in their last job in their last company relied heavily on temporary help, or a human resources manager who's in their previous employment in various places, they've very successfully used executive search firms to help with the senior level core roles, and that their philosophy will change. But if you're going to take the same people who've been making the decisions to not ever use temporary help or staffing services or contract services and convince them that that's the model they should pursue, then, oh boy, you're setting yourself up for failure. So we take a look at industries like the cell phone industry, for example, and we go back to 1987, 88, and there were new players coming from every direction, coming into Canada, buying, getting CRTC licenses, selling the mobile services along with mobile devices. And then along came BlackBerry, and they focused on selling their things. Convincing the companies that were early and were convincing buyers to buy, the vast majority of them are not around anymore. There's always a winner. Somebody wins. But it's a very narrow few. But now you know that cell phone companies, they don't try to convince you to use a phone. They convince you to use their phone because they know you already use a phone. So they talk about features and benefits to existing buyers. They're not trying to convince people who've never used a phone before that they should start using one now. So does the prospect buy? Does the prospect have needs? Are their needs consistent with what you sell? Do they align? Is the contact, do they have the authorization? Are they authorized to make the decisions? Are you dealing with the decision maker? Are they a decision maker, or are they an influencer? There's nothing wrong with dealing with influencers, but you got to get to the decision maker. Are there other stakeholders at this barbecue? Because everybody likes their steak cooked differently. So you're going to have the people in finance who want to make sure that you're a credible vendor and they're financially secure. You're going to have the people in IT and finance that are going to want to make sure that the tools and the process that you use for invoicing or getting orders or sending candidates will integrate to the systems that they have without them having to reinvent the wheel or creating cybersecurity risks. There's going to be the end users in the department who have very specific needs for very specific kinds of people, and they're going to want to make sure that you specialize in that type of thing. There's going to be the human resources people who have got a process that they want to follow and that you're going to have to follow in that process, or maybe an ego that they want to protect, and they're going to want to make sure that they're the boss and that you're told how to do things and you do what you're told. Everybody, every stakeholder, whether they're the decision maker or an influencer, is going to have a different emphasis on the criteria that they think are the most important. IT has theirs. Cybersecurity has theirs. Accounting and finance has theirs. The insurance and the lawyers have theirs. The end users and the producers of the people and the supervisors have theirs. There's the price. There's the budget. There's the human resources process. Everybody who could be involved in this is going to have a say in influencing how it's going to come down. And you need to decide who has the most influence, who is the final decision maker, and how your sales process is going to fit into those influencers and decision makers. Are there other vendor criteria that you can meet? For example, do you have to have a certain financial credibility, or do you have to be using a particular type of software? Do you in order to integrate to their software? Or do you have to specific minimum amount of insurance before you can be a supplier to them? So are there criteria that you can meet? And if you can't meet them, you have to ask the question, can I change my company to meet those criteria, or do I move on? Is the prospect financially capable of paying your bills? Is there already a supplier that the buyer is deeply committed to, and that you're going to have to maybe wait until they fail or prove something significant in order to qualify to get ahead of them? So some of the words that we use while we're talking about these customers and they're worth discussing are things like the customer profile, target market, what our market share is, what market growth is, customer penetration, meaning, you're in one department, you get into another, you have fill certain kinds of jobs, you get to fill the others. You're doing temp, can you do perm? You're supplying the specialty senior level accounting, but can you give the more day-to-day intermediate and junior level accounting? What are the barriers to entry? In other words, what do you need to do to raise your level to qualify to get in? And I like the expression, what are the barriers to exit? What have you done with your customer, or what has the other supplier done with that customer that makes it difficult for them to leave? So, getting a customer, I have one customer that I do some consulting with who sells parts. And over the course of the last 5, 6, 7 years, the parts in these manufacturing environments are now in vending machines. And so instead of having a parts department where you go in to talk to the parts man or parts lady and you say, I need a widget to fit into the gidget, and they spec it and they take it off the shelf and they give it to you and you go put it in your repair thing, they actually have vending machines. And in the vending machine, the supplier knows every single piece that's in that vending machine. And when the customer needs to have a new bearing for something, they go up there and they put the bearing number code in, and it pops out the bottom, and it comes out of inventory and automatically updates all of their inventory supplies in it. The supplier now bills the customer for the use of that because now they've delivered it. They've delivered it from the vending machine to the person's hand. And so this is once all of your parts come out of a vending machine and you're in a part supply business, the new supplier comes in and says, oh, I can supply those things, but you're going to have to leave your vending machine model that's fully integrated into your accounting and your finance and into your inventory control and your inventory management, your supply management, and your time of delivery. It's fully integrated into your business process. You're going to have to leave that. So that vending machine for that company is a barrier to exit. What have you done to create barriers of exit so that your customers cannot and do not want to leave you? Or what have your competitors done with your prospective new customers, creating barriers to exit? And how are you addressing these barriers to exit? Are you competitive? Are you competitive price-wise? Are you competitive in other features? And what are the advantages that the competitive advantage that you offer? So we've got a bunch of different terms, and we talk about our lead management toolkit. So this is our customer relationship management technology. So whether it's the software that we use for our applicant tracking systems that also takes care of our order management and our customer management, or are we using Salesforce or Com or Zoho or something? Are we using some other customer relationship management technology? Do we have lists that we create so that we can do email broadcasts and that we can do some kind of specific marketing? Do we have social media engagement? And are we trying to create followers? And do we have personas of our followers so that the content that we create is shown to different personas at different points in time? Have we created an email marketing campaign? And is that done through our applicant tracking software, through our customer management software, or is it done through a third party thing like Campaigner or Chimp Mail or something else that integrates to our process? And does that integrate to our Outlook or to our Gmail or to whatever tools that we also have? And have we created templates, email templates that exist inside these email marketing tools and in our normal emails that we make a sales call to follow up, that we can give them collateral in the form of a PDF or in terms of a hyperlink or in forms of an email that's structured in a way with the type of information so that we're not, I have one person in my company that is exceptional, like really exceptional, except for her English language skills are very poor. She is, been in Canada for about 6 or 7 years, and we just can't let her write emails. I mean, she is incredible in terms of the service that she provides, the decisions that she makes. But man, if you were to judge her by the quality of the grammar and spelling in her emails, it would be a disaster. So we create templates and we use Copilot and Chat GPT to help her to improve the quality of her written communication. So have you done these things in your lead management tools? So cold calling success, I talked earlier about long lead selling. This is the tough leads, the cold calls. Typically, research shows that there's about 8 interactions that are required before we can even figure out whether or not this is a qualified buyer or not. And we can now, so we have to have 8 touch points with them in order to figure out whether or not they're going to be a potential highly likely customer of ours or that they will buy from us. Whereas a warm call that comes from marketing, where they called you, the number comes down from 1 to 4. And in one of the businesses that I do consulting with, it's 1. When the methods that they use to generate warm leads, if they don't close that order at the moment of the lead, it's not likely to ever close. So it's 1 for them. So the difference between a cold lead, which is 8, and a warm lead, which is 1, super efficient, because the warm lead generation marketing means that they take the call, they close the deal. So we want to be using these toolkits and outreach attempts through our documents and using our CRM technology. We want to make an introductory call. We then want to follow up with an email. This is an example of a workflow. We want to then add that person, that contact person, into our email marketing campaign so that they get the drip, drip, drip. They get the 6 steps in the process, or the 8 steps in the process. They get this, and then they get that, and then they get the next thing, and then they get another thing. I personally believe that when you're making personal sales calls, that you need to make a promise, a minor promise, and fulfill the promise. That you need to say to a person, when we get off the call today, I will look that up and I will send you an email and I'll send the information to you. I will follow up with that copy of the contract. I will send you the personal email and telephone, cell phone number of my colleague who will be working with us on your account. Some type of promise that you can fulfill. It doesn't need to be a big promise. It needs to be a promise, and it needs to be fulfilled. Because promise makers and promise keepers are people that over time, by repeatedly making minor commitments and minor promises and fulfilling them, they create a relationship of trust and confidence. Connect with the person on LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter or through some other social media account so that you've got a different hook into that person and an opportunity to influence them in a different way. Get into your process sending collateral, even if they know all about you. Send them collateral, because at the end of the day, it's got to be convenient. When they decide that they're going to do business with you, remember this: they won't remember your name. They may not remember the company you work for. They will remember the feeling that they had, whether it was a feeling of confidence or a feeling of relationship or a feeling of trust or a feeling of knowledge. They're going to remember a feeling. They're going to possibly remember one or two ways that you communicated with them, and they need to find you easily. It needs to be convenient. So you need to be in their contacts. You needed to give them your information in a way that they could easily go right click contacts, add you in. You needed to send them an attachment. You needed to follow up with them and connect with them on social media. So always send them some collateral. Now, these things can be 3 days apart, 2 days apart, 2 weeks apart. You can have a schedule in which you use your toolkit so that over these 8 connections, you continually to evolve in your relationship with the person so that you're convenient, you're remembered, you're timely, you got there at the right place at the right time, and that they're indifferent, that at least if they can find you, they'll do business with you before they find the other person who they were also indifferent about. Schedule a visit with them, or invite them, even better, invite them to your office. It's always nice to go to their office because you get to see their place of work and you get to learn things, you get to meet other people. But man, if you can get them to come to your office, the relationship is getting stronger. Follow up on a regular basis, put it into your calendar, schedule all of your follow-ups for these people. Put your company name on everything and do it consistently. If you've got email on your laptop in Outlook, have an email signature. If you've got your company applicant tracking and customer relationship management, where you can sometimes send email, have the exact same email signature. If you use your phone, have the exact same email signature. If you, somebody put something into the chat. Gonna look at it, sorry. If you need, I see somebody put something into our chat, please, if you want to ask me a question or chat, turn your mute off and jump right in there. If you've got a tablet that you use sometimes while you're sitting in front of the TV or while you're traveling, and you've got email in it, put it in your email signature. Remember that Microsoft now has this thing called, in 365, they've got this thing called a roaming signature, which, by the way, is the most likely feature to fail. And a huge percentage of people have to turn it off because their email signatures disappear when they all of a sudden log in on their tablet. Their email signatures disappear. Then they go back to their laptop and it's no longer there anymore. This notion of Microsoft 365 working in the cloud has got some problems with it. And you need to have your email signature in everything. And also, put your name on everything. Put it on the pen. Put it on the cup. Put it on the business card. Put it hyperlinks to your website, on your logos, in your slogans. Be consistent and put it everywhere. And ask yourself, if I send myself an email from my laptop, if I send it from my desktop, if I send it from my tablet, if I send it from my cell phone, does my email signature contain all of the information that it's supposed to contain all the time? Because convenience of retrieval is important. Do not embed your name or your phone number or your anything in an image. You can attach your logo, that's fine. But if you put it in an image, it's not searchable. It's not swipeable. It's not copy and pasteable to get into the context. So it's fine to have things in an image, but don't have them only in an image. It's got to be in text format. So look at all of your email apps and make sure that it's consistent, including your business cards, including everything, that it's exactly the same. Think about the barriers and the roadblocks that you will experience all the time. And remember that the gatekeepers were not necessarily hired with a job description that said, my job description as a receptionist and a person who answers the phone is to make sure that nobody from the outside ever gets to talk to people inside the company. They act like that was part of the implied responsibility in their job. And so they create barriers to you getting in to see people. Understand and learn how companies' communication processes work and figure out how to phone people directly, how to email people directly, how to text message people directly, how to use direct messaging to people directly, so that and avoid doing things in such a way that you're going to get caught up with spam blockers, and try to get to the top of their inbox. Always leave a voicemail. Don't always leave a voicemail. Don't ever not leave a voicemail at least once. So you can phone a person 3 times and get their voicemail. Out of those 3 times, leave a message once. Make sure that at least one time they know to call you back. Some people's systems and processes just don't answer the phone. They don't recognize your number. It doesn't show up in their call display. They need to have a voicemail, and you speak clearly. When you leave a voicemail, hey, this is Steve calling from Business Leadership Corp. My phone number is 416-565-9638. That's 416-565-9638. Say it in a practiced way that is slow and it is clear, so that when they get it on their phone and their Apple iPhone converts it, and their Rogers or their Bell account converts it to text, it converts it properly to text and creates a text message for them with the voicemail transcribed, so that they can hear it and they can type it, so that their brain will work, that it's 3 letters, 3 numbers, 4 numbers, because that's the way phone numbers work. Don't say it 4 numbers, 2 numbers, 5 numbers, or some other way. People understand the cadence of area code, 3 digits, 4 digits. Say it in a practiced way that it will be converted to text, voice to text. It will show up properly in their email. They can hear it properly on their voicemail. Always leave a response phone number, and if you can, an email address when you're leaving a voicemail for people. You wouldn't believe the number of people, when they get voicemail, hang up. And guess what your chance of getting a call back is? 0. And as a matter of fact, if they figure out it's you, you just probably ruined your relationship with them, because there's nothing more irritating to people who get voicemails, their phone rings, they go and take a look at it and it's a hang up. And then they see the number and go, oh, that's Johnny. What a jerk. He didn't leave a voice message. I'm not calling that guy back again. Leave a voice message. I have salespeople ask me all the time, should I leave a voice message? The answer is yes. Leave a polite one, leave a fun one, leave an upbeat one. Don't go into huge detail. Don't talk for half an hour. Tell them who you are. If you can, tell them why you're calling. I have a candidate that I would like you to meet, and we need to talk about a schedule. My phone number is, my email is, get back to me as quickly as you can. I'd like to get this into your schedule, and I think you want to get into your schedule as quickly as possible. Again, my phone number is, give it to them again. Try using direct dial extensions. Try typing 0, going to the receptionist, and have it send it back again. Sometimes you phone, you get voicemail, you hit 0, and it takes you back to an assistant or a receptionist, and you say, hey, I was trying to get a hold of Johnny. I think I got his voicemail. Can you check his phone and see if he's there and put me through to him, please? It's Steve calling from Business Leadership Corp. And if you say your name and where you're calling from, they'll think, well, this must be important, or they must be expecting that call, and they'll try to put it through for you. But if you are evasive and you don't say your name, offer the name without them asking. If they have to say, may I ask who's calling, please, you screwed up. Tell them, hi, sorry, I think I just pressed 0. I came from their voicemail. I was trying to get a hold of John. It's Steve calling from Business Leadership Corp. Do you know if he's in, and can you redirect this call back to his phone again, please? I didn't mean to. I'll leave a message if he's not there. And they go, yeah, sure, Steve, hang on a second. And they go back again. Say your name. Try an assistant or a coworker. If you know that they are dealing, if they've got an assistant or a coworker, call them and say, hey, is Johnny in the office today? Do you know the right time to call them back? Can you write a little note on a piece of paper and put it in front of them that I'm trying to get a hold of them? Always leave a message. I already made that point. Send an email with a suggested time. If you do leave a voicemail, send them an email right away and say, hey, Johnny, just tried to call you, got your voicemail. I understand you're busy, no problem. We do have to talk about this thing. Why don't you, if you can't call me back, why don't you send me a couple times and we'll put it in our schedules so that we can get a hold of each other. By the way, I'm in the office till 7 tonight. If you want to call me at 7, up until 7. Send a meeting invitation to a person. They can reject it. They can not respond, but you can send a meeting invitation to a person and set up a meeting. Create a if you're going to leave messages, practice. Create a compelling message. Remember that time when you got your, if you're old enough, do you remember the first, in my day, the first answering machines that came out in people's homes was a tape recorder, and it actually had 2 cassette tapes in it. One with the message that you were recording. Hello, this is Steve. I'm sorry, I can't take your call right now. Leave a message and I'll get back to you. That message. And the other one that recorded the messages when they came in. And in the beginning, it was just laughter. Nobody knew what they sounded like. All of a sudden, people are trying to create a message and use these recording machines, and they're starting to listen to themselves, and they're doing them over and over and over again. Well, nowadays, people are pretty accustomed to creating a voicemail message response. It says, hi, Steve Jones here from Business Leadership Corp. Sorry, I missed your call. If you leave a message after the tone, I will get back to you at my earliest opportunity, but please leave your name and a telephone number and the reason for your call, and I'll get back to you. Have a great day. And so being able to say that with proper clarity and intonation and professionalism is important. Use a script to leave these messages. So it goes the other way. When you're going to leave a message on somebody else's voicemail. Hi, this is Steve. I was trying to get a hold of you this afternoon. Unfortunately, we didn't connect, but this is the reason my call. Here's my number. Call me back if you get a chance. And I'll send you a meeting invitation just on a chance that maybe that makes it more convenient for you. Figure out how to use a script, practice it, get it down for clarity of voice, be respectful, ask for permission to talk to them, and then schedule that call, be clear of your purpose. Don't ever do that evasive stuff. If I ever get an email or a voicemail or a text message from somebody and they sound like they're being evasive about the purpose of the call, hi, can we talk? No, just blocked. Can't do that. So, tips for conversation starters. Conversation starters. Use the prospect's name. When you're talking to them on the phone or in person, say their name a couple of times. Say your name so they can start to remember it, because they're never going to remember it. Name drop. Don't be ashamed to say, my sister Kelly, my next door neighbor Bob, your predecessor Jane. Name drop. Make a point of what the connection in the relationship is. They'll remember that. Be clear of purpose. Again, none of this, hi, can you call me back? Hi, do we have time to talk? Hi, I've got something important I'd like to talk to you about. This is not good. Nobody likes that. Nobody likes it at all. So be clear of purpose. Respect their time. Stay positive. Understand that, think about the Toronto Blue Jays, Canada's baseball team. The best batters of the team are like batting average like 335. The average batter is like 290. You know what that means? The 290 times out of 100, they're somewhat successful in getting on base. which means that 710 times out of 100, they fail. Out of 1,000, they fail. That's 70, sometimes 80. No one's a 200 batter. 75% of the time, they fail because going to bat matters. And it's be positive about the fact that you know that when you call people, they're not going to answer the phone. They're not going to be there. They're not going to just be randomly picking up the phone numbers that they don't recognize. You're going to be leaving messages for people and they're not going to listen to them, or they are going to listen to them and they're going to forget them. Stay positive. Put it in your voice. Put a mirror in front of you and smile into the mirror while you're talking, because it's pretty hard to not to use a negative tone while you're looking at yourself in the mirror and intentionally showing your teeth. Imply a benefit. I've got something that I want to talk to you about, a candidate who I think is perfect for that job that we talked about last week. And I think they can start on Monday. Be positive and imply a benefit. Avoid industry jargon. If you've got lingo in your company, trust me, your competitors got different lingo and your other competitors got different lingo and your customers got different lingo. Don't use lingo about send outs and I don't know, no shows or whatever. I don't know, whatever your term is for anything at all. Say it in common language, like you're sitting beside somebody on a bus and they don't know anything about your industry. Use language that they will use and can understand. Avoid asking stupid questions. I mean, you got to ask questions because good questions expose your knowledge and bad questions expose your ignorance. So learn what you're talking about, ask good questions. So, you've got this on the phone, you've got an introduction, you got to develop rapport, you got to get permission to talk. It's now a good time. You have to get permission to talk. You have to ask qualifying questions. Are you the right person? Is this okay? Do you ever do this? The objective of the call. Can we talk about recruitment? Manage the objections when people say no. Figure out how to politely say, I understand. Why not? And create a call to action. In other words, every time you get on the phone with somebody, make a promise or a commitment to do something and do it. Because it is your actions and your activities that generate results. It is not the statements you make. It's not the features that you describe. It is only the things that you do that generate results. So do something. We call it a CTA. It's a call to action. Get them to do something. You do something. If people are acting and doing things, you're moving closer to completion. If you're only talking about it, then you're going nowhere. The most important suggestion that we give to all people all the time, especially when we're doing coaching, when I'm doing coaching of executives, is block time. Go into your calendar and make a regular schedule for what you're going to do every single week. Every Monday at this time, I attend this meeting. Every Monday at this time, I call customers. Every Monday at this time, I phone and do follow-up. Every Monday at this time, I do interviews with candidates. Every Tuesday morning, I do this. And when you make a commitment to somebody, go into your calendar and put it in a block. Make an appointment with yourself in your calendar for everything you do, from eating to dating to visiting customers to returning voicemails to making sales calls. Block it in your calendar. If it's visual and it's in your calendar and you stick to your guns and you stay in your blocks, then you will achieve goals. It helps you take larger, big goals and break them down into smaller goals, because the big goals are very rarely achieved unless they're broken down into steps. So if you need to talk to 100 customers in the month and you've got 20 days that you work in the month, then you got to talk to a minimum of 5 people in a day. Block those 5 conversations into your calendar. It helps you to stay focused on the things that you need to achieve, and it gets you your rubber closer to the road. It means that you're going to be working on and focused on the activities that are directly related to results. And it'll allow you to avoid the distractions, to switch off your distractions and get into the flow for 45 minutes or for an hour or for a half an hour of what you've got blocked to do in that time. If you're a salesperson and you don't use time blocking, then you are working on luck. Luck is not a strategy. Time blocking is the most valuable tool that every sales rep and every executive and every manager and every mom uses in order to be successful. Be in better control of your to-do list, because to-do lists are just lists. They don't, they just, if you've got a to-do list and you write it down and stick it on the fridge, then at the end of the day, you go back and look at the to-do list and you scratch off the things that are done and you add things that you now need to be added to the list, but there's no relationship between the activity that you're performing at any given moment and that list on the fridge or that list on the side of the desk. They're two separate things. But when you take that to-do list and you convert it into actionable items and you block those actionable items into a time slot in your calendar, now it becomes something that you're going to do, so that there's now a linkage between the to-do list on the fridge and the actions you're performing. So when you already know that's off the list, that's off the list, that's off the list. And the only things that are on your to-do list that are the highest priority, where the rubber is closest to the road, are the things that are getting into your calendar. And all those other things that you put on the to-do list that really weren't that high priority, they're not making your way into your calendar, which again helps you to stay in better control. It makes you aware of your time. It makes you, when you say, where did the day go? How did this get away from me? What did I do today? What am I going to do tomorrow? It puts you in control of all of your activities and encourage you to prioritize those activities that are the ones that are most likely to achieve the results. Hint, 45 minutes. Rarely, if ever, block an hour or longer in order to do something. And even if you're going to block 2 hours to do sales calls, block 45 minutes of sales calls and 15 minutes then to respond to your emails and follow up on things and get a coffee and go to the bathroom. Put that in your 15-minute block and then put another 45-minute block in there. The shorter the block, with the more specific information in the block, the more likely it is that it's going to get done. The bigger the block with the more vague outcomes that you want to achieve, not the activities you're going to perform, start to turn into sort of vague and cloudy days. So it reduces this context switching from one activity to the other, because our brains will make us think when we're hungry, that's the highest priority. When we're nervous, to stay away from things, to avoid things and to procrastinate. When we're excited, that we're going to go towards the things that give us a feeling of excitement and through our dopamine and adrenaline. There's nothing logical. There's nothing structured. There's nothing scheduled. And for people who just go by the seat of their pants every day, living by the emotions that their body chemistry drives for them, if they're successful, they're just magic. Like they're literally 1 in 1,000. And the people that get closer to blocking times are the people who get the most success. So you might want to have a schedule that looks something like this. You take the 3 or 4 activities. I say don't ever make it more than 5 of the most valuable activities that you need to do. Decide how many of them. For example, you can start way over here. Say, I need to new business dial attempts. Okay, this is just you can make it, you can put whatever you want over here. Every week, I want to make 25 new business dial attempts. So you write over here 25. So how's that going to work out? 5 per day, or 10 on Monday, none on Tuesday, 10 on this and 5 on that day. You put it into your calendar and then move it up into your calendar. If you said, I'm going to make 10 new business, so you started over here with 25, then you place it in here, which days you're going to do those 25. So it adds up to 25. Now you've got 5 of them or 10 of them here on Monday. You move it up into your calendar. You take 45 minutes or blocks. This is a bad calendar. This is 30-minute blocks. Should be 30-minute blocks. You put them in here to when you're going to perform those activities. Use your Outlook, use your Google Calendars, use your phone, use your applicant tracking system and your customer contact management system. block time. You're going to find that 80% of your weeks start to look pretty much exactly the same, and that you've got things that are in there every single week. They're recurring things. So you've got a team meeting every Monday morning at 8:30. It's going to be in your calendar every Monday morning. So you love to you stay late every Wednesday because you go to the gym at 7 o'clock. So between 5 and 7 o'clock, you do certain things, follow up on things. You do interviews, put them in there. And it's going to be the same every week. You're going to find that you can be super productive by having recurring scheduled events in your calendar. When you're making calls, pre-plan your calls. Do your research, know your contact's name and their title, have information that you can use to build rapport, have facts and examples that you can use to help build credibility and rapport. Establish what your call objective is. At the end of the call, I'm going to want to have an order. At the end of my call, I'm going to want to have another appointment. At the end of my call, I want them to agree to give me certain information. Establish what your call objective is before the call, because how do you know if you were successful? If every one of your calls is to close the deal, then you're going to not likely be that successful, because remember, 7 or 8 calls in order to get there. So you know that you're not likely to be successful. So establish a mini objective, a micro objective in that call, and then you'll know whether you got there or not. Confirm any appointments you have and all appointments you have in advance. So if you are coming to this meeting today with me, then you should have received confirmation when you booked it. Then you should have received confirmation a week ago or 2 weeks ago saying, reminding you this is coming up. Then you should have received a call yesterday or an email saying, reminder of our thing tomorrow. Here's information you need to know. And you should have something popped up in your calendar that said, in 10 minutes from now, your call is going to start. And then be on time. Start on time, finish on time. When you're going to meetings, hey, look, this is just normal stuff. You know all this. Make introductions to people, say people's names, and then confirm what the purpose of the meeting, of the objective of the meeting is. Define those objectives. Review the customer's business needs. Do everything from the perspective of the customer. Stop talking about yourself and your company. The whole conversation is about the customer. Assume that if you ask the right questions and you're learning things about the customer, that they're going to be assuming you obviously know about that. You obviously can do that. If you weren't asking about it, then it doesn't fit into your mantra. So ask the questions. I have had sales calls with people where at the end of getting them as a customer, I've told them nothing about us, about me, or about my company. Not intentionally. It's just that I kept asking questions and we kept going deeper and they kept disclosing more and more information until eventually at the end of the call, they went, man, this guy knows everything about us. Of course, he's going to be good. He knew exactly what to ask. He asked all the right questions. He got clarity on things that I hadn't even thought about before. And man, does he understand our needs. I want to do business with this person. So change your focus to be everything about them. Identify what their factors are in making their decisions. And then eventually you present a solution and you ask for the order. No asking for order, no order. So we do this by starting off with big open-ended questions. Questions like, so what do you think some of the biggest challenges in your business are? Or what have you guys been doing in the past in order to make this work for you? What are some of the challenges that you've experienced? And as they start to disclose information to you, your questions become more and more and more focused. So allow them the opportunity in the beginning to establish what their priorities are by not penning them in, and let them say, obviously, the things they're going to talk about first are probably their highest priorities, and then start narrowing it down, becoming more and more and more specific. We want to ask questions where we know the answer is yes. Does the reliability of the service that they get back to you in the same day, does that matter to you? Is that important? Yeah, of course it matters to me. I hate going home at the end of the day. Good. And how about this? Good. So these are called positive response conditioning questions, where you ask the question knowing that the answer is going to be yes, or it's going to be positive. It's going to be something. Do you like apples? Yes, of course. Who doesn't like apples? Great. Oh, I got these apples. Do you like Macintosh apples or do you like the delicious apples? And they go, I prefer the delicious apples. Great. I got both. So conditioning a person to respond in a positive way, and then we can ask pre-closing questions and learn and develop pre-closing. I'm not going to tell you what your pre-closing questions are. I'm going to be using an abstract example because every one of you is in a different business. You're in a different marketplace, in a different location, with a different specialization, with a different size, with different features and benefits. You decide what your pre-closing questions are, but a pre-closing question goes something like this. Just suppose we were able to do that for you starting on Monday. Would you feel comfortable in us going ahead with that? I know, I don't know if I feel comfortable yet. So we didn't say, will you give me the order? Will you sign here? We used a condition to get them to determine to us what the example might be of why they might say no. Because if we can discover the why they might say no's early before we ask them for yes. So, I don't know, there's a Rodney Dangerfield movie, I forget what the movie is, Back to School. And he's trying to date, he's an old guy who went back to school. He's trying to date one of the teachers who's more closer to his age. And, the punchline is, she says, no, I'm sorry, I have class. And he's like, no, I'm sorry, I have class. And he says, hey, maybe you can give me a call someday when you got no class. So he asked all the wrong questions. He didn't know. He should have been asking questions like, when do you have class? Are you available ever in the evenings, or is it better at lunchtime? So you ask some questions so that when you get down to it, you can ask a question to try to pre-close, and that if they give you a negative response, it's truthful, it's real, because you've already removed all the other barriers and you know things because you asked the pre-closing, you ask questions along the way, so that your pre-closing question is going to disclose a truthful response. An untruthful response is, no, I'm just browsing. Because the truthful response is, I want a blouse that's this particular color, made out of this particular material and this particular size, with this kind of collar or this kind of sleeve or this kind of thing that's going to fit under this kind of jacket. Because the truth is, I know exactly what I want. But without having gone through all of the open-ended question, closed-ended question, positive response conditioning, then when we get to the pre-closing questions, if we don't do that, then we're just asking a question like, can I sell you something? And they're going, no, I'm just browsing. It's a lie. It's not the truth. So we got to go through this in order to get to the truth, so that when we do ask the closing question, which is a fee of 8, if we could do this at 22% of the salary, and we promise to fill this by the end of the month, can we go ahead with it? There's a closing question. And so we need to do the pre-closing questions to remove the false objections so we can get to the real objections so we can close the deal. So the questions are we hearing the real objection? Is this an authority issue? Does this person really have the authority to say yes and sign on the dotted line? Are there other people that you need to engage? Do they truly understand what you're offering? Is it clear? And if they say no, you know that it doesn't mean no. It means no, not yet. We still haven't got over these false or real objections. We haven't dealt with the things that are standing in my way. So we need to get those out of the way. Did you address the objection by hypothetically removing the issue? Just suppose that I was able to meet that price. Would you feel comfortable in doing business with us? Yeah, it's just the issue. Okay, so we use the term just suppose, or in your opinion, do you believe? Obviously, you've got a good reason for saying that. Can you tell me what the reason is? We come up with these phrases to find out what these objections are so that we can hypothetically remove the objection and go towards closure. So in the event that that price is okay, then we're in business, right? Good. In the event that your boss says okay, you're good to say okay, right? Right. Okay, so let's get to your boss. So we got to figure these things out. And have you um, tried adjusting to a minor commitment? So when you're starting to hear more no's, you come back and ask for something smaller in order to move towards the big commitment. This is why people go for coffee. This is why when people are dating, they say, hey, do you want to grab a coffee? Because they don't say, hey, do you want to go away for the weekend with me on the first date? They say, do you want to have coffee? They back it down to a minor commitment. Will you be available after work for a quick coffee before we go home? And hey, we're on the same bus together. Can I grab you a coffee and I'll meet you at the bus stop in the morning? That's why we have coffee, the minor commitment. So in closing the deals, we got to agree to do business, or we have to take an order and we have to qualify the order to make sure it's real and it's possible. We have to ask them to accept a candidate. These are all forms of closure. Making an offer of employment to a candidate for a perm job is a form of closure. So sometimes some deals have many closures. Do we agree to do business together? Yes. Good. Can you tell me about the job and can I get it in writing and can we sign off on that? Yes. Another closure. Can we change the criteria here a little bit because that's unrealistic? That's salary of, $13,000 a year. It's unrealistic. Can we change it to, oh, sorry, that's a mistake. It's $43,000 a year. Can we qualify the order and get it modified? That's a form of closure. Can we get them to receive and interview and accept our candidates? That's a form of closure. Can we get them to make an offer? That's a form of closure. Once you've gone through the multiple stages of closure, you can send out an invoice, and of course, the payment is a closure. After you have a call with people, we need to follow up and recap and do everything, and always do it. No matter what, no matter how simple it is, send an email saying it was great seeing you today. Here's what we agreed upon. Here's what we talked about. Follow up with a phone call. We need to follow up and say, hey, that was great talking to you yesterday. Thank you very much. Just wanted to make sure you had my phone number. You got it there. Can we schedule something for whatever? Follow up with a phone call. Thank the prospect for meeting you. Show respect for the fact that they have given you their time. Review this call to action. Remember the CTAs? Somebody agreed to act and do something. Review the agreed upon calls to action. You'll do this, I'll do that. Put it in writing. Fulfill your minor promises. Promise maker, promise keeper, promise maker, promise keeper. Make a minor promise and fulfill it. If you've got other people in your organization that are going to be involved in this, make sure they're aware of the minor promises or the big promises or the commitment that's coming down the pipeline or the job order that's in the queue. Make sure that everybody aware of what the next steps are so that you don't end up going back to the trough inside your company and then all of a sudden people say no, or I can't, or I don't have time, or I wish I knew. So make sure people are aware of the fact of the minor promises or the big promises that you've made and the CTAs that are in the pipeline. Update account files and put them in the pipeline system. Make sure that your CRA is up to date and all the information is there because the phone might ring while you're out. You might be on vacation. You might be out of the office. You might be sick. You might be on another call. Make sure that the people around you don't have to think, well, we can't do anything about this till Steve gets back to the office on Tuesday. I'll try to phone him, but he's on a cruise ship. No. Update everything all the time. He said that great salespeople are not necessarily super organized, but a failed salesperson is extremely disorganized. Get it in there. Keep your promises and keep them in motion. Measure things. Pick 5 things, activities that make a difference in your outcome. So the activities that are intended to influence the results, measure activities. Key performance indicators are not about results. They were about activities that drive results. That's why they're indicators of what's going to happen, because we measure the activities that are indicators of an outcome. If we measure the number of hours, no, if we measure the number of customers that are going to sit in the chair to get a haircut, we can predict the amount of revenue we'll have at the end of the day. If we can measure the number of color dyeing hair colors that we do, we can probably predict the number of hair treatment products that we're going to sell by the end of the day. Measure the activities that you're performing in order to indicate results. If you're only measuring results, new orders, hours, revenue, gross profit, it's after the fact. And in our industry, weeks or months after the fact. So if you're selling temporary help and you're getting an order and filling an order, then they work for a week and your billing cycle is 1 week or every 2 weeks, then the timesheets have to come in, the people have to work, then 3 or 5 days later, the accounting people have to generate the invoice, then they generate the invoice, then they generate a report. And 2 weeks after it happened, you're getting a report saying, oh, aren't I so good or aren't I so bad? We want our activities before the order started, way back there, driving what we do in order to be successful. So our performance outcomes are about results, and they give you, they're about gross profit and about starts and about new orders and about sales. And at the end of the week or end of the month, or end of the year, they're going to give you bonuses and things. But if you want to drive results, you got to measure activities. And I've always said to people, never more than 5. How could it be key if it's 10? It's not key if it's 10. If you're measuring 10 things, it's not key. There are only going to be 3 or 4 or 5 key activities that are right where the rubber meets the road that are going to drive the results. So while you're putting together these key activities, be very specific about what they are. Know that they can be measured. You know, in golf, they talk about greens and GIR, greens and regulation. So if it's par 4, it means you're supposed to sink the ball on 4 shots, 2 shots to get on, and 2 putts. It's always 2 putts. Par 4. So par 4 means normal. You did it exactly the way perfect was expected. And if you're better than perfect, you do it in 3. And if you're worse than birdie, and if you do it in less than perfect, you do it in 5. And so it's a bogey. And so we talk about greens in regulation, which means did you put the ball on the green within your first 2 shots? And the green has a perimeter to it that is very well defined. And some places have got a green, then they've got a little bit of fluffy kind of grass, then they've got longer grass. That little kind of fluffy grass is not on the green. And if you land off the green and you get your putter out and you putt with it, it wasn't on the green. It's very specific what it is we're trying to achieve to get on the green in regulation. And it's very measurable because we can see exactly what the green is. So are you making sales calls? Are you talking to people? Are you having a meaningful conversation with a buyer? Was it in person? That's a sales call. So if you're going to measure the sales calls that you have and set goals for the activities you need to perform, which are sales calls, presentations, then you got to be specific of what it is you're measuring. What it is you're going to measure has to be measurable. It has to be attainable. There's no point in saying, I'm going to do 20 sales calls a day when you never do 20 sales calls a day. And so if you do 5 sales calls a day or 6 or 10 a day, whatever your number is, it's got to be attainable, because if it's not attainable and you don't achieve your goals every day or on a regular or a consistent basis, or at least have a really, really good chance of getting there, if you do everything right of getting there, then you're just going to experience failure. So what are you going to do? You're going to lie to yourself and to others about what you actually did so you can feel better about yourself, or you're going to stop trying. So if the number is 4, the number is 4. It's attainable. If it's 8, it's 8. It's attainable. If it's 25 sales calls in a day to new prospects, sorry, never met anybody like that before. Never met anybody like that before. I met a person in Ottawa one time who had 200 potential buyers on his list, and that he would phone them and have like 27, hey, Johnny, how are you? It's me. Do you have any orders today? No. Okay, I'll call you next week. Goodbye. So he called those sales calls. And those were the days when government employees actually answered their phones, and I said, nah. I had another person in Winnipeg who every month went to a industry association meeting with the Chamber of Commerce or something. And they would collect business cards, and they called every business card that they collected, they called it a sales call. I said, this is not a specific, it's not measurable. And so they had set this goal to have this unattainable number. And so they started modifying their specifics and their measurability to reach these unattainable goals. Be specific, be measurable, be attainable. And remember, again, I keep saying, where the rubber meets the road, the closest activity to the outcome, is it related to what we want to achieve? And so follows on social media may not be related at all to new customers. Is it related to the outcome that you're trying to achieve? And is it directly related? Not many links in the chain related to that. If the kinetic energy makes its way, it's like this. This activity creates this result. And everything has to be done within a time period. Set your goals in a time period. If you say my goal is to lose 20 pounds and you never say by a certain date, then you will probably never achieve it. And if you did achieve it, you may not have achieved it in a reasonable period of time. You might have achieved it 20 years later when you finally got sick and lost all your weight and said, I finally met my goal. Well, that's not very real. Create a time frame. So it's specific, it's measurable, it's attainable, it's related to the outcome, and it's in a time frame. And remember what I said earlier, the shorter the time frame, the more likely it is to get done, the more rational it is. And then, of course, once we've done all these things, make sure that you document them into your contact management system and have service agreements that will document all the things that you discuss with your customers, and have job orders and job order details documented and shared with your customers so that you know exactly what you're recruiting for. And if you've got guarantees, put them in writing so that people understand the definitions of what a replacement is or what a refund is and what time frames it's going to be within and what candidate sendouts are. Make sure that these are all in writing. And sometimes we call them term sheets, sometimes written agreements, service agreements. But when you put agreements in writing, my goodness, so many salespeople are so adverse to asking a customer to sign on the dotted line. Once you get used to treating your closure as a signature on a document, it becomes easier and easier and easier. I have had salespeople before that never had written agreements because they never wanted to ask people to sign, because they knew darn well that they were soft orders and that the person who was giving them the order didn't really have the authority to sign an agreement. And these were not good orders. Closing a deal is affirmed when the term sheet or the written agreement is signed, when details are negotiated and defined and written down, and when the person with the authorization to buy confirms it, and when the client's expectations of what is to be delivered is written down so they don't turn around and complain to you about things that you never thought about or never knew. Because some people will keep moving the goalposts if it's not written down. Payment amounts or formulas are predetermined so that there aren't any problems after the fact about how you calculated that fee or how much they were going to get charged per hour or whether tax was included or not. Make sure that you create, I talked about them, barriers to exit to make it, once they've signed the deal, for them to get out and be indifferent about selecting somebody else in your place. Make sure that they don't have multiple, try to create an environment where they don't have multiple agreements with many suppliers, because the agreement, the written agreement, carries less weight when they've signed written agreements with 5 or 10 suppliers. It's just a part of the fake process if they've got 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 suppliers. So try to get something that gives them incentive to be more exclusive to you and you to them. This makes sure that the buyer is validated and committed to you, and it removes the potential for future problems. Some of the motivators and comp plans that we have as salespeople can deal with salary and commission, and different companies put things in different priority. Some people are straight commission because they think that if you eat what you kill, that it will give incentive to people to go out and do deals. Other people say, hey, I can't retain my employees unless I give them the certainty and the confidence that we will protect them through the peaks and valleys. And in the bad months, they're still valuable to us. And in the good months, they get paid and you takes them through. So some companies will say, hey, 80% of your income is going to come in salary and 20% of it's going to come in a commission. Understand in some places that there's a difference between individual and team. So for example, in one particular company that I owned, we had a pool of recruiters because they did so much light industrial, millions of dollars worth of light industrial, that they had like 6 or 7 recruiters in a pen or a pool, and that the orders came in and they got written on a board. We had all kinds of sophisticated systems, but they wrote them on the chalkboard, on the whiteboard. And as they got filled, they got ticked off, checked off, and they would put the initials of the recruiter who phoned the candidate and confirmed it, or emailed the candidate and confirmed it. Then they'd go up there and they'd put SJ, Steve Jones, beside it with a big check mark. And at the end of the day, they counted how many people filled each of those 30 or 40 or 50 or 100 orders, and how many went to Steve, and how many went to Jane, and how many went to Bill. And they had a system so that they all worked as a team together, and the reward went to the team together, and it was divided equally among the team. But the individual things that they did every day said, hey, we're covering for Steve today because he's sick, or because he had a personal crisis, or because he's not on his game today, but that's okay. Because yesterday he filled 20% of the orders amongst 9 of us. And so it exposes visibly what each of the team members is doing and contributing to the team. So sometimes it's in a team. Company bonuses, where everybody gets their RSP contribution or something at the end of the year based upon profitability. These are important things that are part of the team, not necessarily the individual. But in the executive search office, and the person works off of straight commission, 60% or 65% of their fee in straight commission, they only get paid when the invoice is paid. Hey, that's pretty individual. Sometimes we've got people in different roles where there's a different commission plan for new business versus maintenance business. And new business might be the priority responsibility of the new business development rep, and they get a higher percentage of the gross profit commission or something, some measurable in the first 6 months or two years. And then it declines because their objective is to keep going back, bringing in new business. And the maintenance and the service people, their objective is to maintenance and service. So do the comp plans, are they congruent to reward people in a motivational way that gives them incentive to perform the activities, not just get the results, but to participate in the activities that are directly related to the results that they will get rewarded for? Strongly recommend to people that if you are in the business of providing commission on sales, that you make a change that it becomes a commission on gross profit. So if you paid I'm going to make up a number, 1% of sales in temporary help sales, and your gross profit was 30%, then you might want to pay 3.3% of gross profit, which would be the equivalent of 1% of sales. But if the gross profit goes up because your pay rate was there, but your price went up, then they get rewarded more. And if they had to cut the price in order to go down, and it was only 20% gross profit, then hey, they're going to get less in their commission. So I strongly recommend that if we do have commissions based upon sales, that in this modern world where big accounts get discounts and all kinds of things, that we make the change to gross profit. Do we have individual commissions and split commissions? And we've got this issue of allocation. So say you've got 2 people working on a job order. Do we allocate the percentage of the job order, either the gross profit or the revenue or something from the job order? Do we allocate it in a way that is fair, that is relative to the activities that the people performed? And so you could say, hey, this person's responsible for getting the candidate, and this person is responsible for making the sale. And so we've got 50% allocated to the recruiter and 50% allocated to the salesperson. But what if the recruiter went to the pool, did a search, came up with a candidate, gave the candidate to the salesperson, and the salesperson presented the candidate and walked them through the whole thing and negotiated a deal and closed a deal. And the recruiter spent 5 minutes and the salesperson spent 15 hours, but you split it 50% recruiter, 50% salesperson. Is the allocation of the percentage relevant to the activities and the contributions that people made? These are all things that need to be discussed and open and fair so that our reward system is consistent with encouraging and motivating people to participate in the activities that they're getting paid for. And some comp plans are designed only on results. And since our key performance indicators are things that happen before results, and they happen upstream earlier in the process, and those are the things that drive results, maybe our reward systems should have something built into the activities. And we know that if a person makes 100 sales calls and they get 0 sales, and another person makes 25 sales calls and they make 20 sales, that the person who made 100 and got 0 probably not very good at sales. So they probably shouldn't get a lot of reward. Maybe they should not even be in the job, or maybe they need training, or they need help, or something. But if we move our rewards towards activities, then we drive people into the activities that generate results. If we only deal with results, then we're not changing the process that people and the way that people do their work, because what you measure and what you reward people for is what you get. What you measure is what you get. Okay, guys, we're coming in on 4 o'clock, so we're going to close things up in the last 2 minutes. So think about the length of contracts. Temp contracts, by the way, the longer the contract, the more valuable they are. So you want to think always, oh, we're going to need price and margin, and we're going to mark it up even more. But trust me, a 7-year contract marked up at 30% is way more valuable than a 7-day contract marked up at 100%. So think about the length of your contracts and your temporary as much as you're thinking about markup. Remember that the more difficult it is, you probably should mark it up even more. That you have, the more notice you get and the time to fill matters. That if you're always under demand and that's the highest priorities to get filled within hours, then maybe your price should be a little bit higher. And if you're given the opportunity to put it second as your priority, then maybe a little lower. I don't know. Are there value added requirements that are costing your company money, like that insurance example? Are your guarantees expensive? Do they literally fire and lose half of the people that you place there, and you have to honor those guarantees and do the jobs twice? Think about that while you're setting your prices. Think about the employee profiles, and are they creating job descriptions that are nearly impossible to fill? Is the customer willing to pay? Do they pay on time? Is there a risk of not getting paid by them? Does that affect what your price is? Think about the competition that's in there. Do you need to lower your price or to beat out the competition? Do you need to raise your price because you get like in a VMS system, you work on 25 orders, but you only fill 1 because there's so many competitors there? Think about how the system is affecting your business. Is there multiple suppliers or 2? We're going to not talk about markup and sales, but remember that we always need to stay positive. And so here's the closure for today. Remember some of these key things. What you measure is what you get. Measure the right things. Measure them on time. Measure activities. Time kills deals. The longer it takes to close an order, to fill an order, to set a schedule, to get a person out for an interview, every step in the process that takes more time increases the likelihood that the deal will fall apart. Remember this, that if you keep on doing what you've been doing, then you're going to keep on getting what you've been getting. And this is the reason why we have metrics reports, why we measure things. Because if we measure things and we take a look at the results we're getting, then we have the opportunity to change what we're doing to change our results. There's no point in measuring and training and doing things and then never changing how we go about doing things. So you got to measure, then you got to change what you're doing to get a different result. Talk about your competitive advantage. Your integrity as a person is the only thing that you have absolute control over. Make a promise, keep a promise. Always be honest. Things will happen. The differentiator is you, but things will happen. Systems will fail. The internet will crash. The electricity will go out. A candidate will no-show. Things will happen, but your honesty, 100% of the time, you have control over. Remember this, control everything. Remember the example I gave of the candidate who had a skill you wanted to put on the resume and you were going to send them away to fix their resume and send it back? But the person who controlled the process and changed the resume right in front of them and printed out the new one and created a new PDF and sent it to the customer, control everything that's within your control. When you allow other people to do things, boy, oh boy, you better have a relationship where you trust your partner. Because in the recruitment and staffing business, if you can do it, do it. If you're going to wait for somebody else to do it, you're going to wait. Turn your goals into tasks. Don't make them outcome goals, make them task goals. And the activities that you're going to perform will generate your results. You do this by blocking time in your schedule, and you put into the blocks the activities that you're going to perform in those blocks with maximum 45-minute increments, because if it's longer than that, you're going to get distracted. Be the expert all the time. If you're going to be honest, but also you're always going to be doing the right thing. If you know what's good for your customer because you're the expert, you can give them advice and they're going to rely upon you. And remember this, that impatience, except for with children and seniors, in sales, it is a good thing. Multitask, throw balls in the air, start something new before you finish something before. Don't allow moss to grow under your feet. Keep on going. If you don't ask for the order, you don't get it. Always ask. And if they say no, ask why not. Do it politely, but ask why not. Because you need to uncover what the real objections are, what the truth is, so that you can overcome those objections to help them to make the right decision. Be a promise maker and a promise keeper. When you make minor promises, then they start to develop a belief in you that you can be trusted. And you do that by asking them questions that can be answered yes. Condition them to say yes. So ask the questions you know the answer is going to be yes. Every time your phone rings, answer it. Don't lose the opportunity. It's your choice to make, but trust me, people don't leave messages. They phone you, they don't leave a message, they don't call you back. You have no idea who it was. Pick up the phone. For the same reason I'm telling you, leave a message so that you have a chance to get a call back. You got to know they're not leaving messages for you. You don't answer the phone, they're off to somebody else. Put your contact information on everything. Measure everything in short cycles, 45-minute maximum. But if you set a goal for a week, you're more likely to get it than if you set it for the month. And if you set it for the month, you're more likely to get it than you set it for the year. If you set it for the hour, you're more likely to get it before you set it for the day. Shorten the cycles. Be so positive. And remember, when I ask the questions, it's always about them. Don't take it personally if they're saying no. It's always about them. When you have a conversation with a client, ask them about them. When you're talking about features and benefits, ask them what's important to them. When you ask them what they like, it's about them. Don't spend time talking about yourself. It's always about them. When they say no, it's because of something in their belief system about them. It's always about them. Don't take it personally. Replace, when you're looking in the mirror and you're smiling and you've got that smile on your face, then you can also replace some things that we might say, like, yeah, but, change that with like, okay, good answer, let's do this. And so every time somebody gives you an objection, you say, that's great. I'm glad to hear that. Let's try this. Let's go this way. Let's talk about this. Let's find the answer. And when you have promotional items, they are sales avoidance tools or they are brand builders. Make sure they are your brand builders. If it's a cup that you want to have so that you can avoid making a sales call and say, I'm going to drop off a coffee cup, then the coffee cup is useless. The only time the coffee cup is good is when the swag matters, that you're using it to bridge you into a sales call. Use it to build your brand, put your name on it, put your phone number on it, put everything on it, and use it to nurture and develop relationships so you can have a conversation about selling the deal. And remember, hope is not a strategy. The only way you make success is by having a plan, structuring your plan, documenting your plan, putting it into your calendar, focusing on the activities that are attached to results. Hope is not a strategy. Write it down. So guys, there's our presentation for today. We are 7 minutes over schedule. I apologize for that. You may have noticed that the presentation that you had sent to you are shorter than the one that I used today. We will send you an email tomorrow. Promise made that it'll be in a PDF format of the slides that we used today, and we'll send it off to you, and you can have the full presentation in the PDF format to write down your notes. I'm going to stay online for a couple minutes for people who have questions. If not, guys, thank you very much, and congratulations for making the commitment towards your CPC. It's truly appreciated, and you deserve the respect of making the effort. So have a great evening, and anybody want to stay on the line, stay on the line. But we'll see you again soon.